So just FYI, we're broadcasting now. I'm checking to see who's in the waiting room. Welcome.
You still want to do it in Spanish. Oops.
Hey.
So we're still waiting for more people.
Okay. Hey, Adrian. This is Brittany Kick. I just have a hard stop at 7. So if I drop out, that is why. And if there's something that you think I should get to voting on before, let me know.
Great. Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay, it looks like people are piling in here. Let's wait another minute or so.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we may have a quorum here. Some people are missing today.
Hi,
All right.
hi, this is Karina. Are we recording yet?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I also may have to drop out because there's an emergency here in San Leandro. There's a quorum issue. I don't want to divulge too much if we're already on a public thing, but if we have a quorum issue, I wanted to let you know that I may not be able to help, meet the quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, first of all, welcome everybody to the April meeting of the East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors. Glad everybody is here today, both members of the board and attendees who are here to share their concerns and information and whatnot. I will ask now that we start with a roll call.
Yes. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany.
Here.
Berkeley. Berkeley. Dublin.
Here.
Fremont. Fremont. Hayward.
Present.
Livermore.
Here.
Newark.
Here.
Piedmont. Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Here.
San Leandro.
Present.
Tracy.
Present.
Union City.
Present.
Community Advisory Committee.
Present.
Emeryville.
Here.
And Oakland.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, that's a good thing. All right. Thank you all for being here. We will start. First, I just want to acknowledge, as we all have respectively acknowledged in our own jurisdictions and throughout the public's awareness, we obviously had a very important, crucial decision in Minnesota yesterday. We all know what happened. I think it's hard not to acknowledge that, and we all should. I know we all have individually as office holders and as residents of this country. So I just want to acknowledge what happened, and acknowledge that while the verdict was the right verdict, in my opinion, and probably all of our opinions, I won't speak for others, that it's a big difference between appropriate, just accountability in this one case and justice overall. So yes, we're glad this happened, but we still have a lot of work to do. And I just wanted to kind of say that as a starting point, since we all know what happened yesterday and we should not pretend it didn't happen. So I just want to make a few brief comments. I'm going to ask that we, excuse me, sorry, my computer's a little slow here. We're going to go to public comment first, and this is comment for the public to comment on any item that might be of interest to EBCE that is not specifically on the agenda tonight. So, Mr. Clerk, if we could call those who are raising their hands or have asked to be called for public comment, that'd be great.
Yes. First to speak, I am unmuting Shiva Patel. Shiva Patel, I am unmuting you now. Shiva Patel. We can perhaps come back to Shiva Patel, and I can unmute Natalie Balderas.
Hello.
Natalia.
Oh, sorry. Hello, my name is Natalie Balderas. I'm a Hispanic student and senior at Skyline High School, as well as this year's Climate Resilience Fellow at the Rose Foundation. At my high school, I am the ASB secretary, and oftentimes that means I'm in charge of taking attendance at events and taking care of the grade book and attendance for my leadership class. And if a student misses class, I'm the one they email to get excused. And there's honestly nothing more heartbreaking than when I get emails from multiple students saying they couldn't go to class or access schoolwork because their families couldn't pay their electricity bills on time. Or when a student was gone for weeks and I later found out it was because they lost their power for that month. This year, people have lost lives, their jobs, and a plethora of other many things. And electricity shouldn't be added onto that list. We have too many problems right now to worry about losing electricity, which is not only a human right, but really crucial during these times when we can't even see each other face to face. EBCE, as a local public agency, has the responsibility to prevent disconnections. You can create a fund of EBCE dollars and customer contributions designed for debt relief that would not only help out people now, but beyond COVID as well, which will help struggling families access programs that offer discounts and debt relief, or you can issue bill credits to low-income customers, as many other community choice programs have done, which will relieve some of the economic fallout related to COVID-19. And so I'm sure I speak for a lot of youth when I say this, but I also support East Bay Clean Power Alliance's call for community power to prevent electricity disconnections. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I am unmuting. Hold on 1 second. Marjon Amoyni. Marjona, I'm unmuting you now. Actually, I don't see Marjona on our list. Pete Wawodi, I'm unmuting you now.
Hi, my name is Pete Wienerberger. I work with the Reclaim Our Power Utility Justice Campaign. We're a statewide coalition of organizations, fire survivors, environmental justice communities, workers, people with disabilities, and have been fighting for a just, reliable, safe, and affordable energy system across California. And I'm calling to encourage the board to take up the East Bay Clean Power Alliance's call to institute a debt relief program and fund. You know, we know that when people's power gets shut off, the public health impacts are great, especially in the midst of a pandemic. The possibility for homelessness, the possibility for disconnection from community, from employment, are really profound. And we think this is a rare opportunity for you all to step forward and intervene on something that has been a true calamity. And I also want to speak as we are very active in pushing PG&E, our energy provider, to be better on ever so many ways, which obviously impacted many of you all, but including this question of who gets left out, who gets left holding the bill. This board has an opportunity here to set a precedent, to step forward and say, we're not going to let community members be left in the dark. We're not going to let Black, Indigenous, people of color, low-income people, people with disabilities be denied their power to live simply because of the inability to put more dollars into the coffers of a criminal, terrible, murderous corporation. And so we want you all to step forward and initiate this program. And also we call upon this board to step forward and really join us in calling on PG&E and other corporate utilities to have their shareholders eat the debt and not force public funds to go into private hands, but actually build out programs like this, but also force shareholders, force corporations to pay for the damage they've done to our economies and set us up for a true recovery that's not dependent on corporations to provide our energy. So appreciate your time, and again, align ourselves with East Bay Clean Power Alliance and their call for this debt relief fund. Thank you for your time.
Okay. I'm calling Marjon Amoyni. I'm unmuting you now. Marjona, you are unmuted.
She may have to unmute herself in addition to you doing it. There you go.
Yes, I got it. Thank you. My name is Marjon Amoyni. I live in Oakland. I'm a cancer doctor. I speak on behalf of Physicians for Social Responsibility SFBA chapter. And we believe that access to electricity is not just a human right issue, it's also a public health issue. Our vulnerable patients need the electricity for their medical devices to work, for their food to be refrigerated. We're hoping that EBCE understands that we have a responsibility to prevent disruption of services, especially during this very difficult time. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am unmuting Blair Beekman now.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy April. Thanks for the meeting tonight. I guess, I'm still plugging away and learning the concepts that I've been trying to offer here the past few months of I've been worried that your recent IPR reports from October and December have tried to somehow offer that there's a possibility of a large earthquake in the Bay Area by 2023. And that yourselves, you offered in your IPR reports that your solar and storage levels will be on a sharp decline. Excuse me, there's traffic. While there is a large increase in dirty fossil fuel use. And that logic says to me that you're preparing for some sort of natural disaster event. Now, how correct I am about that, I've been writing letters, trying to work that out. It's a long process. It's a back and forth, give and take, and I'm learning things about it. I don't know how correct I am still. We're not quite at a conclusion about the subject. I leave the subject open to yourselves to still consider. And if I'm wrong, please tell me, because I'm talking with other city councils a lot, every week basically, and the subject comes up. And it is being talked about, the possibility of earthquake in the Bay Area, and it's being talked about well. And I want to add to that good conversation. I don't want to offer panic or anything like that. I want to offer informed, good dialogue about how to prepare. And I think it's an interesting way we can all work in the Bay Area at this time to make it an open, fair-minded subject that we prepare for. And we prepare with really good renewable ideas. That's my goal, because once a large natural event, disaster event happens in the Bay Area, then we can transition easier to continue our course of renewable energy ideas and not have to fully rely on dirty fossil fuels. So good luck in how we continue to work on this. I will continue to bring this up and ask, and I hope I'm not annoying about it, and it can be a good learning process for all of us. With 40 seconds left, just a quick reminder, the events in Texas, thank you for the first speakers, and the events in Texas really prove that, we have to have plans that work without money so much. I mean, the safety and health of good electricity far is much more important than electricity itself. And how do we learn to work in those terms more? And I guess that's all. Good health and safety, and thank you for your meeting tonight.
Okay. Beth Wienerberger. Beth, Wienerberger, I am unmuting you now.
Go. Thank you. I am an Oakland resident and also here representing Kahila Community Synagogue, an Alameda congregation of some 500 households. We are members of East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and we support their call for EBCE to take measures to prevent electricity disconnections, especially during times like the pandemic. Uninterrupted energy service is essential all of the time, but I think we've learned, and some of the other speakers have given examples of how crucial it is during the extraordinary times that we're living in. EBCE is a public agency and as such has a responsibility to prevent the loss of critical power to citizens, whether they can pay their bills in extraordinary times or not. The same as other CCAs have offered programs to provide low-income customers with bill relief credit. I think EBCE should be able to come up with similar programs to provide that kind of assistance, and we would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Clutie. Andrew Clutie, I am unmuting you now.
Hi, yeah, my name is Andrew Cody. I'm calling in tonight representing Sunrise Bay Area, specifically our East Bay staff. I live in Alameda County myself, and we've got a bunch of, sorry, not staff, but a bunch of volunteers in Alameda County that really want to support East Bay Clean Power Alliance's call for community power. I joined late, so I can't hear what has already been said, but I think, to boil it down for us, electricity it's a human right. I heard some excellent examples of why that is the case. But everyone deserves clean, local energy that's affordable on uninterrupted service at that. And we want to make sure that we see EBCE preventing disconnections and loss of community choice customers to PG&E. I know other programs like in Marin have used unused funds during COVID to prevent PG&E disconnections, and we think EBC has a responsibility to do the same thing. So myself and on behalf of Sunrise Bay Area, we're calling on East Bay Clean Power Alliance, or we're supporting East Bay Clean Power Alliance's call for community power to prevent electricity disconnections. Thank you.
Audrey Ichino. Audrey Ichino, I am unmuting you now.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Audrey Ichino, and I live in South Berkeley on the Oakland border. I'm a member of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance and the statewide California Alliance for Community Energy. I'm speaking to encourage the board to support social equity measures, even as the pandemic seems to recede. The pandemic has really taught us a great deal about ourselves. It's been heartening to see how EBCE has responded. Its debt relief program has shown at least where its heart lies, even though its actions have been far more modest than those of a number of other CCAs. EBCE should be doing more, not less, for low income and care FARA debt relief. And as we emerge from the pandemic, I want to encourage the board and staff to move in two important directions. First, there needs to be a greater agency effort to expand the ever-important care FARA enrollment. Every EBCE customer who qualifies should be enrolled, and we should not rely so heavily, in my opinion, on digital channels. The digital divide still exists, and we're all at different levels, and we should, I think, diversify outreach measures. Secondly, EBCE should create a permanent shut-off prevention fund for the folks who need it. It's unrealistic to expect many low-income and care FARA customers to dig themselves out from under their accumulated burdens anytime soon. And to be fair, these burdens are of long standing and predate COVID. So the pandemic has actually given us a chance to right many wrongs. And I hope we all take advantage of it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Jayden Almostgan. Jayden Almostgan, I'm unmuting you now.
Thank you, Adrian. Hi, Jayden Almostgan with the Local Clean Energy Alliance and East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Today, I listened to a webinar about replacing peaker power plants with clean energy. And although they were specifically talking about New York City, they mentioned EBC's project in Oakland's Jack London Square. And they mentioned it as a successful example for batteries replacing dirty peaker power plants. And it made me proud of this local public agency. And I thought, why doesn't EBC do the same about utility debt relief? Why don't we become a role model for other utilities by helping our communities continue to have access to one of the basic human needs, which is electricity? There has been some discussion about utility debt relief at several EBC meetings now, including board meetings, and both the public and the board of directors made it clear that EBC should do something about utility debt. There were requests about the website. Both the public and the board members asked the EBC staff to make the information about the utility debt relief programs easily accessible on the EBC website. But most importantly, some board members asked the staff to introduce proposals at one of the future meetings. As the public, we even provided the board with information about what other CCAs have been doing to help their customers. So now I think it's time that EBC staff presents us proposals about how this public agency can help its customers who struggle to pay their utility bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Alita Dupree. Alita Dupree, I am unmuting you now.
Thank you, Chair Dan Calvin, members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's good to be back with you again. I come to you simply as a user of electricity, representing only myself, though surely some would agree with my sentiments. I was looking at some dashboards from Cal ISO, and in calculating out some historical data, it looks like we are seeing times during the day, the middle of the day, when the California grid is operating at a renewable penetration of greater than 80%. And so that is a very good thing. I'm also mindful of the issues of oversupply, curtailment. We have to ask ourselves, well, how do we get some of that electricity and use it? It's going to take the part of a lot of stakeholders. I know if energy prices were going negative and somebody would pay me to use some electricity, well, I'd say, all right, I'm going to do a lot of cooking, turn on my 4-burner electric range and build up the hot water heater, run some dishes, such is life in an all electric home, which is powered 100% renewable for me. I watched a press conference from Long Island, from the Oyster Bay Railroad Station, in which the Long Island Railroad is beginning the work of a pilot to convert some of its M7 electric rail cars to run on battery power when they are not in third rail territory, which is an opportunity to take electricity and charge something with it, move passengers, and move away from diesel a lot quicker than they could do it if they built third rail. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we charge up some batteries? We need lots of storage along with solar. And so I think we have to do more than simply selling kilowatt hours, but delivering them. Shall we become a municipal utility district? Therefore, we can set our own delivery rates. All this economy of scale can hopefully drive down electric rates. In New York, the Indian Point Energy Center is closing at the end of this month. They too have a mandate to build more renewables and storage. Otherwise, the air will get fouled. with various gaseous and particulate pollution. So there's a lot going on, but be aspirational and courageous and legendary. Not just necessary, but can be fun as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar. Jessica Tovar, I am unmuting you now.
Hi, everyone. This is Jessica Tovar for East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And you might have seen our recent letter calling for equity investments in our East Bay Community Energy Local Development Business Plan. It's very important to us that we invest more dollars this year from our budget into equity investments for our community, such as energy efficiency retrofits for low-income, single, and multifamily housing that utilize mechanisms like on-bill repayment or pay for performance. Solar plus storage for low-income and multi and single-family housing, prioritization of electrification programs like public transportation, heavy-duty fleets, and school buses. Programs to develop community energy resilience hubs that we need now more than ever since the recent planned power shutoffs. Local hiring of programs that promote diversity, community representation for both EBCE staff and in our LDBP projects and operations. So we definitely need programs that prevent shutoffs, such as a fund, as many people spoke to today, as well as resilience hubs with islandable solar and battery storage. That's the only way our communities will be able to weather these crises or these storms that have been hitting us left and right, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you.
Thank you. So Margaret Rosoff. Margaret Rosoff, I'm unmuting you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, okay. I'm Margaret Rosoff. I'm with Sunflower Alliance, an organization that's been trying to help convert from fossil fuels, particularly the refineries in the Bay Area. And we wanted to, and I live in Oakland in Dan Calb's district, and we wanted to speak up today to join the call from the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. So many people have spoken very eloquently, so I'm not going to take much time, but just to say yes, debt relief, and keep the electricity going for people who can't otherwise afford it. That's the least we can do in these troubled times.
Great. Thank you. Lastly, we have Zorya Temple. Zorya Temple, I am allowing you to speak now.
Good evening. My name is Zorya Temple. I live in Newark, California, and I'm a young Black college student at SF State. Growing up, my parents had to provide for 5 children as well as themselves. Most of their income from working overtime to provide a private education meant that other financial commitments would be a strain to my parents. There would be nights where I would see my mother buy food for me and my siblings, but not any for herself. I would watch my father, who had been riddled with arthritis, make painful countenances as he tried to get out of bed to go to work the next day. Did you know that 30% of households in the US have had to forego medicine or food to pay utility bills or have received disconnection notices, according to the Energy Information Administration? I have personally not experienced what it felt like to have my energy shut off due to not having the bill paid, but I have come pretty close. The feeling is fear and anxiousness, especially as a kid who worries about their parents' mental state of well-being. I have memories of having to use the power frantically to cook lunch because our gas was going to be turned off. The COVID-19 pandemic has made my family and I live outside of our comfort zone. Since moving to California right before the pandemic hit, my parents were both jobless, and we had to live with my grandparents and cousin. The home was overcrowded, and at times animosity would find its way into our shared spaces. This was due to the fact that my parents were unable to find a job right away, and just other family complaints. COVID-19 has impacted the way we eat. 2 separate meals are prepared because 7 people live together in one household. The way we go to school online, where the Wi-Fi isn't strong enough to support 8 devices at once. After months of job searching, my mother has a job but is still struggling to pay the bills all on her own. And my struggle to not be able to ignore how this pandemic is causing pain for a lot of other families as well as my own. Families should not have to choose electricity over a meal. Families also shouldn't be held accountable for accumulated debt during a global and unplanned pandemic. Energy insecurity is spreading as fast as wildfires in California. Something needs to be done. I support East Bay Clean Power Alliance's call for community power to prevent electricity disconnections. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, is that all our public speakers today for the open comment? Adrian, you're muted.
That concludes our public comment. Although I should say there was one public commenter, Shiva Patel, who was not able to. He was muted, and I think that he's dropped off. I don't see him in the attendee list.
Okay.
But we do have one more person with their hand raised. Would you like me to recognize him?
Let's give that person up to 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, Melissa, you, I'm unmuting now.
Hi, board. I'm Melissa Yu, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club. I would like to start by thanking the agency for taking actions to support the community through grant funds and already contributing to local community efforts. And I'm here to echo the ask by many today. So I'll keep my comments short and ask that you continue these efforts by creating a debt relief fund. And additionally, there needs to be more efforts to enroll care, FARA, and medical baseline customers. Let's work together to actualize community and community choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, members of the public, for sharing that information. That's very helpful, and I know staff heard this as well. We have a lengthy agenda, so I want to get right to it. I'm sorry, I do see Councilmember Kick, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, I know we have a long agenda, and I'm afraid I'm going to be off here before matters initiated, so I just wanted to potentially, have a second to address what I just heard, if that's okay, Chair Cal.
We're only allowed to have very brief comments because it's not on the agenda, so we can't really have a long discussion about things not on the agenda.
Sure, I would just love I don't have time if I'm gone from matters initiated. Can you maybe direct me to the correct staff member to ask some questions about what we heard requested today, so I can become more informed as a board member on the actions that we have not taken?
Oh, absolutely. Nick is here. He heard that request. So if anything is not,
I will follow up there. I just wanted to make sure I had a chance to ask before I potentially had to drop off here before matters.
Sure.
Thank you.
Dan, let me just say, we are planning to have a more extensive discussion at our upcoming executive committee meeting on a variety of things that we are working on. I will also just say, many of these things are sort of best discussed in the context of the budget for the next year. Yes. So I think that's one thing. One other point I just want to make is that when we talk about customer disconnections, East Bay Community Energy cannot disconnect a customer.
Yeah.
And the charges that are outstanding to East Bay Community Energy are not used as the basis for customer disconnections. Customer disconnections, or residential customer disconnections at least, are only made based on outstanding, debt to PG&E. And we have no ability to forgive the PG&E debt. So whatever debt relief or debt forgiveness programs we pursue, I think it's important for us to recognize that that may reduce the customer burden, but it does not systemically eliminate the risk of a disconnection. There are other things we can do around care enrollment, as an example, and using our, say, DAC, Disadvantaged Community Green Tariff program to help make bills more affordable. But fundamentally, one of the best tools we have is to encourage customers to enroll in the AMP program, because that not only forgives EBCE debt, but it forgives the PG&E debt. And the PG&E debt is really the driver of disconnection risk.
Thank you for that clarification, and I will follow up. If I have more questions, we can move on to the next thing. Thanks, Chair Kell.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, colleagues, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. And so I'll ask people if anybody wants to, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, items 4 through 9 on the consent agenda. If anybody wants to pull an item off the consent agenda, now would be the time to do so. And I'll ask for any hands raised. You just need one person and a second to do that. I'm seeing none. Okay, does anybody have any questions for staff on the consent agenda? Okay, I'm seeing none.
I'll move consent.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Patino?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
And I'll second.
Okay, do we have any, thank you for that. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public commenters on the consent agenda?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Blair Beekman is signed up to speak on items 4 and 5.
Okay, and we're going to ask people to keep their comments to 2 minutes so we could get through the agenda tonight.
Okay. Okay, I am unmuting Blair now.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I'd signed up for the 2 items, but I will wait until the regular agenda to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for the public commenters, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so seeing no other questions, can we have a roll call vote on our consent agenda, please?
Yes. Alameda County.
Aye.
Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Berkeley.
I think Kate, indicated that she would not be here tonight, so she's excused for tonight.
Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Aye.
Hayward.
Yes. Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Aye.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Aye.
Oakland.
Aye.
The consent calendar is approved.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much, colleagues. We're going to move on to the next agenda item. That's the CEO report. Nick?
Okay. So we have been getting our board committees up and running here. So we have been having our regular monthly executive committee meeting. We had our last meeting in February. We have Finance and Administration Procurement Committee meetings, one coming up on May 7th, and then another one on July 9th, and then another September 10th. So really kind of our schedule for that committee is set for the rest of the year. And then similarly, our Marketing, Regulatory, and Legislative Committee is working to schedule for the rest of the year. It has met, it met on April 1st, and I believe they're working to schedule the meetings for the rest of the year as well. We have also been holding monthly special board retreats. So this last month we had a board retreat that was well attended on our technology and analytics activities. And we have further retreats coming up on power procurement and regulatory and legislative matters and marketing. And those dates are May, June, and July. On the marketing and account services front, we continue to enroll our new communities. So that enrollment occurs over the course of the month, every weekday effectively of this month. We have another batch of customers who start taking service from East Bay Community Energy. This is also the period during which we are proactively noticing customers of the transition from PG&E to EBCE service. As you know, so we think about statistics, this is usually, this month and next month are the 2 months when we see the highest customer opt-out rates. That's typically because customers are starting to realize, okay, if I want to opt out, I'm going to do it at the very beginning of taking service or often when they see their first bill. So far, our opt-out rates in total are 3.3% of customer accounts in our 3 new communities, which is very much in line with our expectations. So nothing to worry about there. We have held 5 different webinars for residential and solar customers in our 3 new communities with nearly 150 members of the public participating. And Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, we've held those in through at least 3 different languages, I believe.
Those were held in English and Spanish.
English and Spanish, okay. Did we not hold, no, never mind. We held a TOU transition in a 3rd language.
Correct.
So, those typically are covering the basics of our service, and covering things like how our bill works. We are also, at the same time that we're enrolling new communities, we are starting to communicate to customers the TOU transition. The TOU transition is a changeover that customers are experiencing. This is something that came from the California Public Utilities Commission, but it's a shift from to time of use rates for customers. Now, customers have the ability to opt out to non-time of use rates, but it's a mandatory transition. So we are seeing that transition start, I believe, in May. And so we've been doing customer information sessions there as well. And we have done English, Cantonese, and Spanish for those sessions across the service territory. We've done 3 of those so far. And those are the main things I wanted to cover in my CEO report.
Okay, colleagues, any questions for Nick or staff on the items within the CEO report? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Mr. Clerk, do we have any members of the public to make a public comment on the CEO report?
Yes, we do. Blair Beekman is signed up for public comment for item 10. Blair, I am unmuting you now.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for this item in the report. I was impressed at the CAC meeting that there was a special attention given. It sounded like that reports were and studies are being able and needs are being able to be passed out to both to the many languages of the area. And there seemed to be an emphasis to want to do that and to think about it and to want to do it. And that was nice. It was nice to hear. And I hope that can become a regular practice because I work in San Jose, and those problems arise in San Jose. We've had a past where we demanded an English only course for our lives in our society, and we're learning how to navigate through that, and it takes work, and we're doing that work now, and it's just nice to hear. So thank you. I wanted to quickly comment also on overall CEO issues of the IPR reports that I'm always talking about, October and December of 2020. And I've been impressed. I've already seen certain ways that those IPR reports have made their way into, BOD meetings of January through March. And I hope you can continue that good work and those good efforts. And it'll be nice to see. And I know you have the ability to do that. And I hope you'll be continuing to work on that, on those efforts this summer to give merit to and weight to exactly what we're reporting in those IPR reports of October and December of last year. So good luck on those efforts. And I'll be looking forward, and I'm confident that I'll be seeing it. So thank you for your time and all your good work. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, I have to get my computer back on. Thank you very much. This is just an informational report, so we don't need any motion. Actually, I keep on forgetting because we do things differently in Oakland. To the clerk or our legal counsel, do we need a motion to receive an informational report, or we just skip to the next item?
No motion would be required, just to receive a report.
Okay, we waste our time in Oakland doing that. I don't know why. Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have the Community Advisory Committee report.
Hi all. I had two things I wanted to share with you tonight. In our meeting on Monday, staff came to the CAC and was really putting forward a request to help find potential sponsors for the new Community Solar Green Tariff program. And so that was really nice to hear. We had a few members of the public that piped up and sounded like they had some ability to share potential sponsors, and Samantha Weaver is kind of the point person on that. She provided her email, so that was nice to see. The second thing is the chair and I have been working on a metrics initiative, and in the CAC annotated agenda is a link to actually what we're trying to do as part of that agenda before we term out in July 1 of this year. But the thing that I wanted to share most with you is we have been working with JP on putting together and coming up with a public meeting around environmental and social justice metrics. So it's in the planning stage. I know he's been talking about it some with Nick. We're hoping to have something occur in late May to early June around metrics around these, and staff have been working on it, and we've been working on it with JP, and we just provided the CAC with that update now. But that'll be a public meeting. I will be able to tell you more exactly in terms of dates and any agenda that's coming up in the May meeting. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any questions of our Community Advisory Committee leader?
Oh, I do have one more thing.
Yes, please.
I want to say thank you to everyone who put the time and effort in to get the appointees that you're going to be talking about later in this month's agenda. I appreciate that. It'll be good to have some new faces on the CAC.
Thank you, Mary. And Mr. Clerk, do we have any speakers for this agenda item, public speakers?
We have no speakers for this item.
Okay. All right. Thank you again, Mary, and thank you to the entire committee. And we're going to move on to the next item, which is indeed what you just referred to, is the Community Advisory Committee appointments. And see, Nick, who is presenting on this?
That should be Alex DeGiorgio will present on this.
Okay, and could we increase this, could we zoom into the shared screen there a little bit? Is that possible? Excellent. Alex?
Hi, Chair Call. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Go ahead.
Alex, you're still muted.
Now you're muted again.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, members of the board, members of the public. Alex DeGiorgio, Public Engagement Manager. This item is a continuation and partial culmination of an update your board approved to the CAC in October. As a quick refresher, this update included, among other things, an expansion of the CAC's membership to 12 seats, and it also allocated representation regionally within EBCE's service area. And this includes 5 regions: North, South, Central, East, and San Joaquin. And the purpose was to provide proper, proportional, and more equitable representation, particularly given the inclusion of our new member communities in the cities of Newark, Pleasanton, and Tracy. Also, by allocating the seats regionally, staff could better engage all board members and alternates on outreach and appointment recommendations. So in December, EBCE created an online application for members of the public who are interested in applying to serve on the CAC in these new seats and in the new alternate seats. This application was open and available to the public from December 15th through February 15th and was announced through multiple communication channels. And these communication channels are summarized in the staff report. So I can quickly list a few of those. We emailed all board members and alternates the language and links to the application to disseminate to their constituents. And I want to give a heartfelt thank you to all of our board members and alternates because that outreach that you did really paid off. We received about 26 applications, and the applications represented all regions. We got multiple applications from every region. As far as other outreach channels, we created a pop-up announcement on EBCE's website, including on the homepage, which ran for more than a month. So anyone who went to our homepage during the months of mid-January to mid-February got an announcement about this application and a link to it. We also had an announcement about this in our Direct Current newsletter in the January edition of that. We announced it to Stop Waste Technical Advisory Group, and Stop Waste is the Alameda County Waste Management Authority. And so, and they have run a group that has staff members from every jurisdiction. So we announced it there as well. And we also announced it to all of the recipients of EBCE's hyperlocal sponsorships. And as I mentioned before, thanks to that and the engagement by your board, we had 26 completed applications. By the end of the application period, every region was represented. And once we had those applications, we then distributed the completed applications and invited appointment recommendations from the board members representing the EBCE region of each respective applicant. So the applicants from the northern region went to the board directors who represent those jurisdictions. The applicants from the southern region went to the board directors who represented those applicants, and so forth. To date, 3 of the 5 geographic regions have communicated their appointment recommendations to staff, and these recommendations are also summarized in the staff report, and these are the recommendations that are offered for appointment this evening by the entire board. The remaining 2 regions, those appointment recommendations will be presented for consideration by your board at the next available meeting. And so for this evening, we have a resolution for your board to consider for the approval of those three regions that have made their appointment recommendation.
One of the messages in Spanish. I was thinking.
And that's all I have.
I'm trying to get a second shot today. I'm trying to go stand by. And I'm in the EDC. I didn't get one.
Someone made me,
I have an EDC meeting right now.
mute off.
No, it's okay.
/coronavirus for COVID-19 updates.
I'll text you.
Adrian, could you
I might
please
just
mute
go
everybody
after.
but Alex?
Trying to mute. There we go.
Just mute all, please.
Sorry, Chair Kolb, that's my report, unless there are questions, or unless Nick or anyone else has more to offer.
And so thank you, Alex, and we will take public comment in a moment. So we're being asked to adopt the recommendations that are in the staff report for those slots that are open, the ones that we have recommendations for. Is that correct?
That's correct. This would be like the confirmation of the appointments.
Got it. Okay, let's first take any public comment, if there is any, Mr. Clerk.
There are no speakers signed up for public comment. Or
somebody just raised their hand.
Someone just. I can recognize William Mertenberg for 2 minutes.
Yep.
On one second.
Hello, good evening, board members. I just want to say how appreciative I am of the opportunity to have been recommended for the appointment to the advisory committee. I do look forward to this opportunity to work with you all and to bring more awareness to the city of Tracy and to hopefully more areas here in the southwest side of the San Joaquin County. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this opportunity and look forward to either meeting all of you virtually or in person one day. And just want to say thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you stepping up and willing to volunteer on this committee and help out EBCE. Really appreciate that so very much. So we'll go to the questions or comments from board members. First, Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Alex, thank you for all the hard work you do day in and day out on the effort to get the word out. Just a quick clarifying question, Alex, that I have, and I don't know this because I haven't seen this item come before us before. Do the community advisory members, because they devote a lot of time in this effort, do they receive a stipend?
Yes, they do. And that is mentioned in toward the bottom of the report.
Okay, I couldn't see towards the bottom of that report. And what is that stipend, if I may ask?
Certainly. The stipend, I believe it's $100 per meeting. I'm sorry, in the report, there's just the total sum of what the increased stipend will be to the budget. But if I'm not mistaken, it's a $100 per meeting limited to 2 meetings. But the committee generally only meets once per month.
Thank you. And I don't know if there's a statutory limitation as to the stipend that we can provide to our advisory committee members. But again, I do recognize there's a significant amount of time vested in helping us as we navigate a lot of these critical issues. I would certainly welcome a budget item coming forward in our next budget session, which possibly looks at maybe increasing that stipend, which might then further encourage others to want to participate in this worthwhile committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Patino.
Yes, Alex. I thought the three of us, Newark, Fremont, and Union City, had picked someone for our area. Am I wrong on that, or I remember picking somebody. I thought everybody else had also.
Thank you, Councilmember Patino. I didn't receive confirmation from all of the board directors representing the region. I did receive yours and Councilmember Hammond's, but I was waiting on one more, and I wanted to make sure that we had confirmation from all of the jurisdictions within each region before moving things along. So those appointments will be considered at the next meeting, I apologize for the delay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and any more? Mike, is that your hand up again, or is that left over?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't lower it, but while I have a moment, I'll go ahead and move the item if I may.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the stated recommendations for adding members to the Community Advisory Committee. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Second.
I think that was Councilmember Patino, I think, was going to second that. I think I heard his name first. Okay, seeing no more questions or comments, can we have a roll call vote on that, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Alameda County.
Aye.
Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Here. Dublin.
Yes. Yes.
Fremont.
Yes. Yes.
Hayward.
Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Yes.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Aye.
And Oakland.
Aye, thank you. And thank you for that. And for those board members in the regions where we haven't yet finished our review, I believe in each of those two regions, we are partially finished. Those board members who haven't yet weighed in, please do so. You know who you are, so there are a few of them, and we appreciate that very much, so we could do this before the next meeting as soon as possible. Thank you so much. We're going to move on excuse me, to the next agenda item, which is the approval of our legislative positions and review of our legislative package. Is that Melissa?
Yes, it should be Melissa. Yep.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So today I wanted to provide you a update on the PCIA as the regulatory update, and then a legislative update as well. We can move to the next slide, please. So first, I just wanted to give a little refresher on the PCIA. And as many of you know, it is the authorized way for the CPUC to ensure that PG&E recovers uneconomic procurement costs. And this is based on legacy contracting and generation investments that PG&E made while our customers were still PG&E's customers. And for EBCE to maintain our value proposition, our generation rate plus the PCIA need to be less than the equivalent PG&E bundled generation rate. That's because PG&E customers pay the PCIA costs as part of their generation rate, and our customers pay it separately. So we're always comparing gen rate plus PCIA to the PG&E rate. So the PCIA rate, which is how much our customers pay, is set annually via proceedings at the CPUC called ERA, or Energy Resources Recovery Account proceedings. Separately, PCIA rate design, which means how the PCIA is actually structured, is the subject of an ongoing PCIA rulemaking that we've been participating in for several years. As you may recall, the PUC adopted a new framework for rates in October 2018. And implementation of that decision has been ongoing. As part of that decision, the CPUC created a working group 3, which was meant to address what do we do with all of the resources that are in the utilities portfolios that essentially are, excess of what the utilities actually need, given that customers have left service. And so after about a year's worth of work as part of that working group 3, back in February 2020, a number of parties filed a joint proposal that determined, or that specified how PCIA eligible resources should be allocated among all customers. Unfortunately, on April 5th of this year, the CPUC finally issued a proposed decision, very long awaited. We were hoping that they would adopt the Working Group 3 proposal. Unfortunately, the proposed decision went in a different direction. Next slide, please. So on this slide, what I did is actually compare the Working Group 3 proposal to the proposed decision so that you can see what the differences are. And I've separated this out by the different product types. These are attributes of the energy that is in the utility portfolios. So in the Working Group 3 proposal, what you will notice, there's a commonality among all three product types, is that essentially those attributes are allocated proportionally to all LSEs whose customers pay the PCIA. Sorry, LSE is load serving entities. So folks like us whose customers pay the PCIA would have a right to an allocation of a proportional amount of each of these attributes. We have the option to accept or reject those allocations, but essentially the utility would have to make those offers to us for those allocations. Under the proposed decision, the commission gave it some different treatment depending on the product type. So for RA, resource adequacy, which we need for reliability, the proposed decision does not allocate it. The investor and utilities get to keep all of the resource adequacy, including any excess. Resource adequacy is in limited supply right now. So this is not really ideal when you're talking about ensuring that everybody's on equal footing. In terms of the RPS, which is the renewable attribute for the energy, this one, the proposed decision would allocate proportionally to all PCIA paying customers, LSEs, but it wouldn't start until 2023. And it also prohibits us from ever reselling any of that allocation. So if we should find ourselves to have excess and want to resell our position, we wouldn't be able to do so. Furthermore, it allows the investor-owned utility to set an auction bid floor for any excess. And then if it doesn't sell at that bid floor, they get to keep the unsold excess. So again, we have some concerns here that instead of just auctioning off to maximize the value of that product, that under the proposed decision, the utilities could be favored here again. And then finally, greenhouse gas-free energy. The proposed decision would only allow allocations through 2023 and defers actions after 2023. So perhaps they will continue allocations, perhaps they would assign a value to greenhouse gas-free energy, which they failed to do back in 2018, but it's very unclear. And so this introduces a lot of uncertainty for us because we don't know what allocations we may or may not get after 2023. So as we take a long-term planning approach, it's much, much harder with this uncertainty. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? We're doing some advocacy. CalCCA and its members, including EBCE, are working on comments and also ex parte meetings with CPUC commissioners' offices, which is typically how we're able to communicate with those offices prior to a proposed decision being voted out. The opening comments on that proposed decision are due on Monday, and reply comments are due on May 3rd. And then the proposed decision at its soonest could be voted out on May 6th. It's possible that through our advocacy, we get a hold on the proposed decision and or some changes. So it may not be voted on the 6th, but that's the soonest it could be voted on. However, if we're unsuccessful at the CPUC, our best bet is really to continue our support of SB 612, which is the CalCCA sponsored bill that EBCE is supporting and essentially would adopt the Working Group 3 proposal. So that is the update on PCIA, and then I'm going to move to a more general legislative update, but if you would like to entertain questions on the PCIA portion, I'm happy to do so.
Yes, let's see if any questions on that before we move on. Board members, any questions on the PCIA update we just received? Okay, seeing none, continue, please.
All right, next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a quick update on the bills for which EBCE has adopted a position. And then I will move to the 3 new bills that we are recommending to take a position on. So here you'll just see quickly that we've sent in our support letters and that most of these bills are moving along. AB 525 is the Chew bill on offshore wind. That committee hearing was postponed, but we've been told that it will be scheduled soon. So that bill is moving. At one point, it looked like it might not. I did want to note.
I'm sorry, Melissa, I thought that was going to be heard today. Was that not?
I thought it was perhaps next week, but I will double check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, AB 1087, also Chew bill, is on EJ Community Resilience Hubs. We took a support if amended position. We did draft some amendments. Unfortunately, the sponsors rejected those amendments. I think they are struggling with the bill. And so it's unclear whether they will be able to do what we were hoping. Essentially, they are looking for a third-party administrator to administer the grant program. We were hoping that CCAs could have more of a role just because we are so close to our communities and we think that we could help streamline the process. But we will continue working with the sponsors and we may get to support on this bill. I also wanted to point out AB 1539 was a gut and amend. So the subject matter is completely different. So we're withdrawing our position on that bill. It's a different bill. Also worth noting the budget bill that we voted to support is not yet in print. But the budget process is a little bit different than the typical bill process. So that budget bill is being prepared for a June budget package. In the meantime, we have signed on to a coalition as supportive. So that's the best way at this stage in the process to indicate our support. Next slide, please. So those were updates on Assembly, and then I'll go through updates in the Senate.
Melissa?
Yes.
I'm just checked with the famous information that was never wrong on Twitter. And assuming it's correct this time, the offshore bill 525, David Chew's bill, has passed out of committee today.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Okay, so on this page, we have the status updates for the Senate bills. I think these ones are also moving along. I know that SB 99, the Dodd bill, was passed out of committee. And the Portantino bill, SB 612, is up for committee on Monday. Okay, next slide, please. So today I had 3 recommended bill positions for the board to consider taking. The first bill is AB 33, authored by Ting. This bill would amend existing law and particularly a CEC grant and loan program to local governments to add that, that eligible activities include expanding installation of energy storage and availability of transportation electrification infrastructure. So right now, local governments can already take out grants and loans to maximize energy use savings, but this would add those 2 additional features. These are obviously activities that EBCE has been involved in and that our cities are involved in and that we are looking to continue our involvement with. We think that this expansion could provide additional funding to make more of these types of activities available and therefore recommend a support position. AB 1239 is another Ting, and I also wanted to mention that AB 33 passed out of committee on consent today as well. AB 1239 is a bill also authored by Ting, and this one deals with demand response and essentially having the CPUC undergo an investigation into why demand response is failing in the market and not reaching its full potential, and what can be done to make sure that the market failures aren't repeated, including looking at revising policies governing demand response. Furthermore, the CEC and CAISO would also need to develop initiatives to achieve all cost-effective demand response by 2030. We think this one is really positive, as we are always looking to invest in demand response. It's one of our DER type investments, and obviously no carbon when you can shift your load. So this one is I think called for, given the kind of lack of regulatory support for demand response that we've kind of seen historically. Having said that, this bill has become a 2-year bill, and so did not go through its committee hearing. The committee hearing was canceled. So this bill may become more relevant next year. Still, we think a support position is warranted, and the 2-year bill is kind of breaking news. So didn't have that available when we put these slides together. Finally, we have SB 589, authored by WASO. And this bill, one of the key things that it would do is require the CEC to identify workforce development and training resources needed to meet EV charging infrastructure goals. So currently, the CEC is already required to support these EV charging infrastructure goals, but this really pulls workforce development and training into the mix in a more concrete way. I think the expectation would be that this might attract and start to develop more jobs and more opportunities for communities and for people that maybe have not historically been able to enter into this kind of a workforce. And so it could be really positive and seems well aligned with EBCE's goals in terms of our community workforce development. So this is another one that we would recommend supporting. Next slide, please. So in terms of our next steps, we're continuing to review and analyze bills and amendments. There are a lot of amendments right now. Things are moving quickly. As always, we're sending position letters once we formally take a position. We're also monitoring the bills on our watch list and determining when we should take a position. We're continuing to monitor the governor's budget request for the $1.5 billion for zero emission vehicles. No update there at this time. And then continuing to engage with CalCCA on legislative efforts, particularly around SB 612. I think, the first part of the presentation really highlighted the importance of 612 in terms of our PCIA needs. And I have sent out a request asking all of you to please reach out to senators seeking their support of SB 612 at an upcoming Senate hearing on Monday. We're also requesting EBCE member jurisdictions to take a support position as well. When those jurisdictions are listed as supporting, that often helps influence the senators who are voting as well. And I would thank all of the cities that have already done so. So a number of our cities have, but for those that have not, we'd love to have you as well. And I think that concludes my presentation today.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. And you're asking, this is an action item for those additional positions that you're recommending. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to first ask if we have any public commenters to comment on any of these bills or any other bills for that matter. Do we have any public commenters today, Mr. Clerk, on this item?
We have no public commenters signed up for this item.
Okay. Okay, colleagues, any comments or questions on any of the bills discussed or presented today? Okay, I have I already communicated with staff on this. There are a couple of bills I'd like us to look at, SB 67 and SB 68, and I'm hoping we could bring that to the board at the next board meeting for consideration. And if staff could look at those and decide what their thoughts are. One has to do with kind of a strengthened clean energy standard for the state, and the other has to do with processes and funding and support for EVs and building decarbonization. both authored by new State Senator Josh Becker. So if staff could look at both those bills and bring that back to us in time for our next board meeting, that'd be fabulous. Seeing no other comments, do we have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation on the new bills today?
I move Lopez.
That's Councilmember Lopez.
Correct.
I'll second. Naren?
Councilmember Narum from Pleasanton, second. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and time for the roll call. Mr. Clerk, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Alameda County.
Aye.
Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward.
Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Aye.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Aye.
Emeryville.
Aye.
And Oakland.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent. Thank you for your work, Melissa, on tracking all the legislation and working with Cal CCA on trying to move these bills forward. And I'm going to, hold on, find our, okay. And our next agenda item is, as soon as I could get it in front of my face, excuse me. Our next agenda item is 14, the California Community Choice Financing Authority, JPA. And let's see, is it Nick or Howard presenting on this?
Howard, yes, I'll be presenting on it.
Thank you.
Good evening, and let me just start by apologizing. We had a bit of an error in the posting of this item, and so we actually did not include the JPA agreement itself with the packet information. I think Adrian has emailed that over, is that correct?
I just emailed it to all EDCE
Okay,
members.
so the item has been emailed, and I think we'll do a Zoom screen share of it as well after the presentation. I would propose allowing me to present on the item. It is an action item, and then we'll do a screen share and take any questions. And if there are questions or concerns due to the sort of a lack of time to be able to, fully read the document, we, do have the option to defer the item to next month and, take action then. If it is possible that we address questions this evening, I would certainly like to try to keep to an action item tonight, but again, apologies for the error on our part. So Adrian, if you can go to the next slide, that would be great. All right, so the topic of the energy prepaid transaction has been presented now a few different times at various board meetings. I believe it was at a regular board meeting, executive committee meeting, and the FAT meeting previously. It is a transaction that we're working through right now with our counterparty Morgan Stanley and our partner Silicon Valley Clean Energy. On negotiating, diligencing, and sort of fully evaluating. Let me start by just providing a very brief overview of what the energy prepaid transaction is. And then specifically what we're seeking approval for tonight is the formation of a JPA entity that would serve as the bond conduit issuance vehicle. So it is a part that, it is a JPA that enables the ability to do the energy prepaid transaction. But for this evening, we are not seeking action or approval on actually moving forward on the energy prepaid itself. That is an item we'll continue to bring forward to the board and speak to a little bit further in the coming months, as there are additional sort of negotiations and documentation that are we're in the process of reviewing and discussing. The energy prepaid transaction, starting on that, is a long-term financial transaction that's available specifically to municipal utilities and other tax-exempt entities, such as CCAs, and it really enables a pretty meaningful power procurement cost savings opportunity. As I noted, we're currently in negotiations with Morgan Stanley as the counterparty on this, and they were selected through an RFP process. And ultimately, the prepaid transaction, the intent of it is to issue a tax-exempt bonds that are off balance sheet in order to prepay energy. And as a public agency that is, of course, tax exempt by nature, we're able to reduce our procurement costs by utilizing that tax exempt debt cost as opposed to a taxable debt interest rate. Historically, this prepay structure has been used pretty widely for natural gas prepayments nationally and certainly in California as well. It's a newer application to be applied towards energy itself, though it has been done in similar structures by other municipal entities. And I would say currently right now, there are other CCAs that are evaluating this process as well, in addition to EBC in Silicon Valley. Lastly, the action that we're bringing forward tonight is the formation of a JPA that is specifically to serve as the bond issuance conduit. And the prepaid transaction does rely upon one of these in order to actually issue the bonds. Adrian, next slide, please. There we go. Great. So a little bit more about the bond issuance conduit itself. There are other issuers for hire, we call them, out in the market that we can basically utilize without forming our own JPA. Really, the reason to form our own JPA is twofold. One is to have a little bit more control over the process and establishing all of the policies and administrative rules for how to utilize the issuance conduit and then manage the prepaid transaction. And then the other one, which is actually more of the reason, is really from a cost savings perspective. So the issuers for hire in the market are $200,000+ annually in order to really do a fairly administrative role in the overall prepaid transaction. And by going forward with what we are proposing with the JPA, the cost will be far less than $200,000. The legal fees to sort of set up the entity are about $60,000 that are split amongst 4 CCAs. And then going forward, it's really about hiring an auditor and doing some basic filings and things like that. So it will be primarily operated by staff members of the various CCA members. And so that cost can be reduced pretty substantially over the course of a 30-year bond life. Right now, the 4 CCAs that are part of the founding members for this JPA are Central Coast Community Energy, Marin Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and ourselves. And so we are proposing to create this JPA. Again, the JPA stands for California Community Choice Financing Authority. And the primary objective of this JPA is to undertake financing or refinancing of energy prepayment transactions. So it is specifically and narrowly focused on energy prepayments and won't be broadly used beyond that, and is specific for CCAs at this time. So while we've discussed the idea of allowing other municipal utilities to participate and utilize this vehicle, the intent right now, as the JPA is written, is it is sort of solely focused on CCAs. A couple other points here. One is that the formation of the JPA itself is, of course, no obligation to EBCE to move forward on the prepaid transaction. So, as I noted, we will bring forward the prepaid transaction and review that in more detail going forward, probably in the May-June timeframe with the board to make decisions on that. And again, just to better educate the board on that transaction structure. And lastly, the JPA no way is in order to serve as a policymaking agency. It's really a project financing based public agency. So not intended to sort of advocate on any policy, though from time to time it may support some public policies purely in support of sort of prepayment type transactions and ensure that there are no, and it supports sort of the general purpose of prepayments. Next slide, please, Adrian. Thank you. The membership of the JPA itself is divided into 2 tiers. The first tier is the founding members, which will have voting rights. Again, those are the 4 members that I've already highlighted: Central Coast Community Energy, Marin Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and ourselves. And then there's a secondary tier of associate members, we call them. And really those members are intended to be other CCAs that want to issue a prepaid transaction. And so they would be able to issue through the conduit itself, but not have any sort of voting rights in the process. Their individual prepaid transactions, as it would be outlined in their own sort of letter agreement with the JPA issuing contingent, would allow them to take action on behalf of their prepaid transaction, but otherwise would not have them sort of voting on how the prepay itself, or sorry, on how the JPA itself sort of acts. And I've mentioned this already, but just to emphasize, the CCCFA membership is limited to CCAs and solely for the purpose of issuing prepaid transactions. Last point here is that on the JPA itself, it is proposed that the directors will be the CEO, the general manager, executive director of the various CCAs or designee that they may have. And we've proposed that they are directors of the agencies themselves. The directors be sort of staff members of the agencies themselves, just due to the nature of the sort of financing complexity of some of these transactions, and that they are sort of long-dated, long-term obligations of the entity. Last slide, Adrian. So this slide is just detailing some of the limitations of liability of the JPA. Under California law, the JPA agreement will be a public entity separate and apart from this JPA. And so the debts, liabilities, and obligations of the CCCFA JPA will not constitute debts, liabilities, or obligations of EBCE. If a member wants to withdraw from the JPA, it can, though we must retain 3 members for the JPA itself in order to ensure that the bond financings are not consolidated on any individual member's balance sheet. So that is an important factor. The other note is that the JPA itself will actually be a counterparty to the prepay supplier in this case. So we are negotiating documents with Morgan Stanley. Ultimately, it will be the JPA that is a party to those agreements with Morgan Stanley, and EBC would actually sign an agreement with the JPA itself as part of the sort of power supply agreement that is associated with the energy prepay. I noted this earlier, but I'll just reiterate that the costs of the JPA itself are about $60,000 in terms of the legal fees for setup of the JPA, and that will be shared evenly amongst the 4 founding members that I noted. Any additional costs will really be the administrative costs that will be passed through from the JPA directly to the members on an even basis. And again, those things will cover things like an annual financial audit, needing to hold public meetings, any filings, things of that nature, but fairly minimal in nature relative to sort of other issuers for hire. That is the summary presentation of the JPA itself. In your packet materials, and we have shared here, there's an appendix section that really is a presentation on the energy prepaid transaction that we've previously presented on. So I wouldn't plan to review that portion of the presentation in detail here, unless there are questions that the board have wanting to better understand the energy prepaid transaction itself. So happy to do that. And alternatively, I would recommend that we share the JPA agreement itself on share screen and provide an opportunity for board or public comment if there are any.
Thank you. And Adrian, are you looking to post that on the screen?
I'm setting it up right now. I just have to scoot the screen over. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second while I get this set. Ah, there we go.
You may have to unshare and then reshare.
Right. All right.
Yes, when we all run for office, we have to make sure we tell our constituents we know how to share a screen. Very important skill these days.
There we go. My apologies. It was just buried under screens.
I still don't see it. Oh, there it is.
There we go. Okay, can you increase the size a little bit? Zoom in just a little.
My hope is that you also have this in your email inboxes if you want to view.
I think we got it today a little while ago, but of course the public doesn't see it, so we have to make sure we have it on the screen for the public.
Got it. Yes, absolutely.
And to our legal counsel, a process question. This is an action item. What do we need to do to make sure we are authorized to actually cast a vote on this today?
Sure. So back in the pre-COVID days, we would have printed out copies for the board, put them on the dais for you, and put a couple of copies for the public on the table in the back. So our best effort to do the equivalent of that will be to share this on the screen right now. And then I've also instructed Howard to post it on the website as soon as possible. So we will scroll through the agreement here and maybe touch on some of the main points, Howard, if you don't mind. Will you scroll down to the body of the agreement under the recitals? So for those of you on the board and perhaps in the public who have reviewed joint powers agreements before, this is a fairly standard joint powers agreement. The tasks that are being undertaken by this particular joint powers authority are very technical, and I think Howard did a great job of describing what the authority will be doing. But as with other joint powers authorities, you will each member agency will have representation on a board and can take action on behalf of the joint powers authority. Were there any other terms, Howard, that you wanted to maybe touch on here?
Sure, happy to. Adrian, I might suggest, just as a heads up, just so you know, it's kind of flickering in and out a little bit, so I'm not sure if you're toggling screens, but sure. If you can hit that paragraph icon sort of like in the very top of your Microsoft Word, it might clean up a little. There's some weird icons on the screen, so if you just click on that, I think it gets rid of that. Great. And then if you can maybe zoom out just a little bit, I feel like it might give a little bit cleaner view for folks. Great. I think the main body of the agreement itself that we should probably put on screen is on page 3. And again, I might zoom out a little bit, Adrian, just so we can kind of show a little bit more of the document. I think it'd be helpful. Great. Yeah, I think that's
Adrian,
good.
Can you try to zoom out so you get the whole page?
Yeah. I think that's good. That's probably, that way it still maintains some visibility. And then if you can go to page 3 itself, Article 2 there. Yeah, I think that really is the sort of substance of the document itself. So the creation of the CFA. Section 2.01, of course, sort of states the sort of general liabilities of the CFA do not constitute debt, liabilities, or obligations of any member, which I've touched on. The general purpose of which is under section 2.02. And I think I've touched on this, it really is for the undertaking of financings or refinancing of prepayment projects on behalf of one or more of the members. And is solely focused really on prepayment project. And then section 2.03, if you can scroll down a little bit and capture some of the subsections, really are the powers of the CCCFA. And I think these are fairly sort of traditional, straightforward sort of powers that a JPA would hold. So I won't necessarily read through all of this, but I think that's a substantive section of the agreement itself.
You have a moment, perhaps, Adrian, to scroll down to the next page. I think it would be helpful so that the public can see the entire agreement, especially the important terms of termination and membership.
Yeah, so why don't you go to Article 3 here on section 3.01 and 3.02. That's on the founding members and the associate members, which I touched on, the 2 different tiers. And then the section below that is regarding cost allocations in section 3.03, and then 3.04 is withdrawal, membership withdrawal. I think those two sections are important.
As long as the JPA continues to have 3 members, it's actually relatively easy to withdraw from this joint powers agreement in relatively being in comparison with some of the other joint powers agreements that you've likely seen in your roles with cities and counties, and even easier than some of the ones that EBCE has brought before you before as well.
And Mr. Clerk, do we have any public speakers signed up for this item?
We have no public speakers signed up for this item.
Okay. All right. Board members, are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Hannan.
Yes, Howard, thank you for the report. Just a couple clarifying questions, if I may. On the associate members, Howard, will they incur a proportionate cost as associate members as they look to issue their bonds for their communities?
Yes, they will. So the idea is that all founding members and associate members would evenly split the actual operational costs of the JPA.
And is it likely, Howard, that associate members may come and go as it warrants the issuance of bonds for their respective communities? Or once they're an associate member, there's an expectation that they're going to kind of stay with the JPA?
The idea is that the associate member role is really for when you have an active financing taking place. So once a bond is sort of expired, then they would no longer be an associate member. With that said, a lot of these are long-term financing, so they are for 20 or 30 years by nature. So that's pretty long as is.
And as you capture the kind of the relevant points on the formation of the JPA, it seems to me, at least from my perspective, that this seems like a real benefit to our CCA. Is there any reason we wouldn't want to become a member of this JPA? It seems like the only costs are the costs associated with actually forming the JPA and the annual costs that we would normally incur. Is there a downside that I'm just not capturing in your presentation that would concern me?
I don't think so. I think the JPA itself there's really very low risk or liability associated with it. It is purely for prepaid transactions, and there are the 4 CCAs right now that are contemplating this transaction. If for some reason in the coming months we decide that we don't want to move forward with the prepay, staff doesn't recommend it, or the board is not satisfied with moving forward with it, basically we would not have any relevant role with the JP itself. And in all likelihood, we would probably encounter a circumstance there where all CCAs probably don't want to move forward candidly. So it would probably just dissolve. We would probably terminate it. So of the JP itself, I think there's fairly little risk. This is sort of one of many steps that we have to take to be able to do the energy prepaid transaction itself. On the prepaid transaction, are there risks and liabilities associated with that? I think there is more discussion that we should have on that topic, though. The short response there is that, I think it's a relatively low risk. It's more about an opportunity cost of, is there going to be a better financing structure in the future? And that's something we've touched upon in the past, but with the way of how we envision the prepaid transaction itself, there is a discount that can be utilized for our procurement costs, and that is certainly something that we want to try to do to sort of optimize our own finances.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, my last question on this is our representation on the JPA. Would it be board members, or would it be staff? Who would represent this CSA on the board?
It would be staff. I touched on that briefly. It would be the CEO, executive director, or designee. And the reason that we recommend that is because this is a pretty sort of financially technical entity. So felt that staff members would be most sort of informed and educated on that. And then also the long dated nature of the obligation itself, it would make more sense to have staff on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mary Sutter.
Thank you, Howard. And folks, just the CAC did talk about this and we're in support of the JPA. I have a couple basic questions, Howard, and I apologize. It's not about the JPA and the formation of it, but it's about how the JPA funding would be used. We've been putting a lot of money into our accounts to build our credit rating. You know, every year we've been trying to get more and more to increase our credit rating so we can purchase and get financing at a lower cost. This seems to be a vehicle that has that same purpose, to obtain funding at a lower cost. Do you see those two, the two kind of mechanisms moving forward at the same, similar to how they've done before? It's just going to give us another avenue, or is there any potential that we would not need to build up our reserves as high because we don't need the credit rating anymore? You know, we can get it through this vehicle.
So I would sort of look at these as two pretty different issues. So on the reserve aspect of things, I think, you know, we'll want to build a reserve for, you know, in order to establish a strong balance sheet, pursue a credit rating. Having a credit rating has its benefits to reduce overall borrowing costs and our counterparty costs of transacting in the market. This energy prepaid transaction really is, the gist of it is that we as a public entity have an ability to issue tax-exempt bonds. And that is, of course, has a lower cost than taxable bonds. And so we can do that and then basically go prepay energy with those funds and reduce our procurement costs themselves. So there are energy procurement cost savings that we otherwise would not get if we didn't do a prepayment transaction. What we do with those savings is, you know, of course, at the discretion of the board, you know, it lowers our costs. Those cost savings are not earmarked for one particular matter. And so we could increase our reserves, we could put it towards something else, but, you know, at the end of the day, it reduces our procurement costs, which are unfortunately in many ways in a rising sort of cost environment. So I think these are some of the things that we really want to do to stay competitive, and is unique to us relative to, say, a PG&E or IOUs, which are obviously not public entities and not are for-profit entities, so therefore cannot do these types of transactions. So it is a competitive advantage to us specifically that we want to try to pursue.
Thank you. And one last question. When you put a bond out, there's a credit rating, I'm assuming, that goes with it. And is that the credit rating of the members that are putting forward the bond combined? Does it matter? Is it the individual JPA members, or is it the JPA itself? And this is just probably something that's known by folks who are involved in this, but I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It is not a credit rating on EBCE. It's not a credit rating on the JPA's members. It's not even a credit rating on the JPA itself. It is a credit rating on the bond transaction itself. So, you know, they'll look at an energy prepaid transaction contract, basically saying for 30 years, we will buy energy, and here is the money for that energy. And so it is really an evaluation of the bond transaction, which, you know, looks at, you know, what our role is in that overall structure, but is not an evaluation of ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I see any more questions. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the staff recommendation.
I'll make a motion.
Mayor May, thank you.
Hernandez will second.
And Mayor Martinez of Emeryville, second. Okay, that's moved in second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Alameda County.
I believe Supervisor Valle had to leave.
Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward. Okay. Livermore.
Yes.
Newark.
Yes.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Emeryville,
Aye.
and Oakland.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Adrian, Hayward's vote is yes. I apologize. I didn't hit mute fast enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, that passes. Whoops. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the Oakland Roots Climate Justice Partnership. And Nick, are you presenting on that?
Annie is going to be presenting on it, but I wanted to just, before we jump in, say we also have Taylor Beggs, I believe is how he pronounces his last name, from the Roots Online. But I also just wanted to offer sort of a preamble, and Annie's going to get into a lot of these details, but this is a kind of our first foray into this kind of larger, higher profile marketing partnership. And I just want to really highlight the fact that while this team may be named the Oakland Roots, this is really an East Bay enterprise, and a team that has a lot of reach throughout the county. And I think they really want to reach into Tracy as well. They train in Livermore. They obviously are playing in Oakland, but they have real, partnerships throughout throughout all of our cities, especially in the youth soccer area. So, with that, Annie, why don't you jump in?
Thanks, Nick. Good evening, board members. So as Nick indicated, we're bringing forward to you tonight an opportunity to really expand on the existing partnership that we already have with the Roots team. And as we go through tonight, you'll see it's really more than just a soccer team. For those of you that aren't familiar with them, they spent many years in a very similar process to what EBCE went through with our initial steering committee and the community involvement. And there just continues to be a number of parallels in our mission that make this an opportunity worth bringing before the board and getting your feedback. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Adrian. So a bit of background is we have been partnered with the Roots since they started in 2018. It's been really exciting to work with Taylor and the rest of their growing organization. As I mentioned, they are purpose-driven, and they're really maybe the only one in professional sports with this kind of community focus. And so they're looking to expand on that. And as they grow and have more reach, they've sort of developed these next level of partnerships, which I'll get to in the following slides. But moving on to the next slide, they are really doing a lot more than just soccer. So early on, when we started Shelter in Place in March, we reached out to them and said, okay, how do we come together and start to help our communities because of the reach that we knew they had? So together we produced about 8,000 masks, and we distributed those to different community-based organizations throughout the area. So the building, and this isn't even a complete list, the Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency program, which is based in Berkeley but serves Hayward, Oakland, San Leandro, the East Bay Feed ER or Feeder, again, based in Berkeley, but is working with Albany, Emeryville, Oakland, the Eden Area Interfaith Council out of Hayward that also serves San Leandro and Alameda County, the Creating Hope Initiative, which is countywide and based out of Dublin, and then Daily Bowl, which is in Union City and serves a lot of Fremont, Hayward, and Newark. Additionally, the Roots took action to create some really fun educational content, which they called Lil Acorns. So some worksheets and coloring pages as we all kind of scrambled to figure out what do we do as we shelter in place. Again, they're always thinking about the community, putting them first. Great example is their Artist in Residency program. There's a lot of sort of art integration with what they do in the community. They've also partnered with a local small business, Oaklandish, to produce their kits and their other merchandise. Oaklandish has shops both in 3 in Oakland, I believe, and 1 in Emeryville. They have a partnership with 36 local youth soccer leagues, and that is expanding. I'll speak more to that later. And many of their initial founding partner sponsors are local brands, kind of like EBCE, with a social mission and also with an expanding reach. Just this past fall, they hosted the Justice Match in response to everything that is going on in our world today. And as Chair Cald mentioned at the start of this presentation, you know, things that we can't turn a blind eye to. And as a soccer agency, you know, there are expanding this awareness for gender and racial equality, equity, and justice. As part of that, they developed the Justice Fund. It's a charitable fund to support racial and gender justice. And then their, you know, artistic reach continues to expand as they work with local blues artist, Fantastic Negrito, who just recently won an Emmy, and he is Oakland-based, and he'll be developing a musical anthem for the team. We can go to the next slide. So what exactly am I here asking for? And as Nick pointed out, we realize this is a big ask, especially at this time, but I'll go through why we think it's worth evaluating. But you know, here's the main point, right? It's $300,000 a year for a 3-year commitment. But as you can see, they've really put a lot of time into developing not just, hey, here's a sponsorship, you can slap your logo on stuff that we do, but actually creating these pillars of how they want to engage with our communities. So there's the arts and culture, literacy and education, access to sport, health and wellness, financial literacy, and then climate and environment, which they have called deeper roots. And that's where EBCE comes in. And I will say, as a founding partner, they came to us, and there are others in a similar space to us who are maybe waiting in the wings. And I'm hopeful that we can really leverage this partnership and be the deeper roots pillar sponsorship and move forward with climate justice with an organization that is also similarly purpose-driven and has expanding reach to communities that we want to be engaged with. So if we can go to the next slide, the deeper roots sort of pillar, as they've defined it, is to promote environmental sustainability, climate justice, not only in Oakland, but throughout the surrounding area. And so there's a number of opportunities where we can partner with the roots, but this isn't, you know, I don't believe that this is in any way an exhaustive list or even a limiting list. So they're looking to do community greening programs, tree planting and education, food justice with a local group called Planting Justice, doing recycling programs for soccer equipment, digital storytelling, which is such a great way to reach people, knowing that there is the digital divide, but this is really a great way to reach a lot of people and really have an impact. And then we would also be the presenting sponsor of this particular pillar and really focused on climate positive, which is a new term in many ways, because you certainly don't see sports teams doing this, but I think there's been a lot of talk about climate neutral, where you're offsetting what you're doing, and the Roots wants to be climate positive. So they actually want to go beyond just being climate neutral. And I think there's clear synergies between our two agencies on how we can help promote that, not just for the actions of the club itself, but what all of their fan base and all the people they reach can do to be climate positive, not just climate neutral. So next slide, please. So a quick summary, you know, all of that being said, they're a clear, obvious partner. I think that's the no-brainer part. And then there's the dollars. So, okay, well, what are we going to get out of this? So we have some logo and player integration opportunities. For this level of sponsorship, it would be a back of jersey branding, and I'll speak more to about the number of jerseys, walking billboards that would be out there with the EBCE brand. We'd have logo at the game day match, program and website. We could participate in some of the game day events that they do, so sort of like a block party. Some of that is uncertain about, you know, when it will occur, how it will occur, given today's current restrictions, but that is an opportunity in place for us to engage and interact with more of our customers. And then a player integration for a marketing effort or an event or a video. And I'll just put a little side note here that keep your eye on social media tomorrow, because we hope to launch a very exciting video that we've made in partnership with the Roots as a little Earth Day celebration. We'd also have the opportunity to be a game title sponsor. So this would be like Opt-Up Night with EBCE for a game, or maybe it's Roots and Resiliency as a game night. But we would be that presenting title sponsor. We would have opportunities for an extended period to essentially take over the Roots website, giveaways. So that's getting brand awareness, branded items out to the 5,000 people who attend the games. And then, of course, included in the press coverage and advertisements. The game day branding, as you can see below, there's field signage and building signage. We'd also have the opportunity to do an info booth at the game. And then some additional adders are the season tickets, which we've used to basically use as like a promotional item for different customer engagement call to action campaigns that we've done. And then there is a sponsorship. So 1% of what we pay gets donated to a social justice organization. So if we can go to the next one, Adrian. So then some more of the sort of traditional marketing advertising promotions. So there are TV commercials, in-game reads, logo and brand visibility, which I'll highlight here. A great proposal that Taylor and his team have made is that for every goal scored at home games, $510 would be donated to some form of carbon offsetting, carbon positive effort within our service territory. And that would be sort of being done on behalf of East Bay Community Energy. So again, clear alignment on our missions and really great brand awareness and brand building for us as a young agency. And then there would be additional press opportunities. We go to the next slide. So as I talk about these commercials and the websites and social, what exactly does that mean? What are the numbers? So the Roots just signed a deal with Coffee TV. So that is a Bay Area access. I mean, I don't even think you need to have cable. Coffee is sort of available to everybody, and it's about 6.5 million viewers in the Bay Area. Of course, there's an additional reach with ESPN Plus. So that might not all be targeted right in the Bay Area, but again, it's getting our brand out there. The game day capacity is about 5,000 fans, and right now all 6 home games are on pace to sell out. The Roots have amazing social media content. It's really great. Their Instagram has over 22,000 followers. They have a youth network that is about 20,000 community members participating between the players and the families. They have an email list that goes out to 10,000 people. They have great web visits. People are going to their site to buy tickets or to buy merchandise, which then directly leads into the sale of these jerseys. They're projecting about $2 million for this year for these jerseys, keeping in mind that our brand would be on the back. So this is, tens of thousands of walking billboards so that people start to recognize our name. And when they get a piece of collateral or an email from us, they're like, oh, I recognize that. And they're more likely to engage, which is what we're trying to do now. We've gotten beyond, for Newark, Pleasanton, and Tracy, we're still in the customer retention, new programs area. But really across the board, because we have these great programs to offer, we're really looking for customers to take action in a way that we've never asked them before. And so the more that we can sort of get out in front of people with the brand recognition, the more likely they are to be engaged in these programs. So a couple more points for this slide is just the partner reach. They partner with Pandora and Puma, and hopefully many of you saw the recent announcement with Marjon Lynch. So Oakland native, Cal grad, Raider at one point, and he is now a new investor for the team. And I'm also hoping that many of you saw his interview with Dr. Fauci. And I think that really drove home a lot of the key points about the kind of reach that Marjon Lynch has, for populations that have been impacted by COVID and also impacted by the kind of debt burden that we're now seeing with our customers. He's a great channel to communities with that message, someone that they trust. So we're hoping to leverage all these different aspects of this relationship with the Roots if we move forward as their climate justice partner. Let's go to the next slide, please. So a couple other points I wanted to make just to show the reach. Taylor has provided us with some ticket and merchandise sales. So the top 10 geographic areas you can see within that has 15 of our service areas within these regions where they've had the top ticket sales and merchandise sales. They also, again, with the Marshawn Lynch announcement, had some really great local press coverage. So we're looking at East Bay Times, The Chronicle, SF Gate, Mercury News, Oakland Side, NBC Sports Bay Area, and then of course much broader, which I think that's appealing to certain partnerships for us. The more local, the better, and they certainly get that. So if we can go to the next slide, part of their local reach is really about the youth clubs. And so they have more than this, but here are the 15 that are within our region and currently have an agreement to be, part of the Oakland Roots network. If we go to the next slide, there's 9 more that have previously been part of the network and are just sort of in the process of signing up again. And the Roots are working on another 20 plus clubs throughout 11 jurisdictions that we currently serve. They're also developing a network of school districts and community organizations, such as Dublin Unified School District, the Hayward Unified, Family Andrew Boys and Girls Club, and CSU East Bay. So again, just wanted to really highlight how this expands beyond Oakland. They are working on a relationship with a local retail chain that has locations in both Berkeley and Dublin. And their team, as Nick mentioned, currently trains at Las Positas College in Livermore, and they occasionally train in Newark as well. So next slide is on the demographics of their fan base. So their fan base definitely represents the diversity of the East Bay, Alameda County, and Tracy. They also represent, maybe a slightly more affluent portion of the population, which is great for outreach for certain programs like Resilient Home. And this image here is actually a screenshot of when they do also stream their games online for those that are not there in person, and we've had some great branding opportunities there as well. So if we go to the next slide, just trying to sort of summarize, we think that this sponsorship will increase customer awareness and increase our program participation between the website, social, jersey branding, in-game branding, the cross-promotion of events, the community outreach. This is all really going to help sort of lift up and elevate our brand. It's also, I think we can do a lot to help the Roots in their goal of becoming climate positive, and that can really be mutually beneficial for both parties. And then all of these networks and partners that they have, I think is going to be great, could be a really great opportunity for us. So the presenting sponsor night we talked about, I'll just drop down to the last one, which is also, they have these local sponsors, and those are channels through employers that I think could also gain us, maybe to more than just the soccer fan base. So like Kaiser Permanente, which has 33,000 employees in Pleasanton alone, Pandora with 2,000 employees in Oakland, and Fremont Bank, which has 500 employees. So if we could go to the next one. We don't normally talk about brand awareness campaign having a return on investment or a, cost to sale or cost to opportunity, but we know that this is a big ask, especially at this point in time. And so we wanted to think about, okay, well, we know that the impact we want to have is one of the impacts, of course we want people to participate in programs that help to address climate change, but we also want to help people with their debt. And so the AMP, the Arrearage Management Plan program, is one way to do that. And so through AMP, again, just a quick reminder, when a customer signs up for AMP, they have, for every month that they pay their current balance, they get 1/12 of their, sort of consolidated debt forgiven. So after the course of a year, whatever debt they had is forgiven. And I believe the upper limit is something like $1,500 for residential customers. So it's significant. So the customer debt forgiveness, getting people to enroll in this, that's an obvious win and something that we want. But the other part of this is that when that 1/12 of debt every month is forgiven, that gets paid out of the public purpose programs charge, which is spread across all customers. And EBCE is actually going to receive payment for that debt rather than just having to write it off. So when we do that, it means we can invest more into our local development business plan. It means that we can confidently continue to offer the same discount, that we can continue to pursue higher levels of renewable power within our Bright Choice product. So not having to write off that debt is a benefit to all of our customer base in the end. And so when you look at there's about 13,000 people currently, this is a moving target, but currently about 13,000 that are eligible to participate in the AMP program. 47% of those are within Oakland. Then you have 14% in Hayward, 11% in the unincorporated region of Alameda County, and then it gets down into the single digits. So of those that we currently have enrolled in this program, the average arrearage is about $315. So if we were able to get all 6,300 of these eligible participants in Oakland to actually move through the program, it would be the equivalent of a debt forgiveness of almost $2 million. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to sort of take those numbers and apply them to, what is a potential return on investment for this over 3 years as a $900,000 investment, which in the break-even scenario, it's like, okay, we need about 3,000 people to participate in AMP. With 3,500 people, we have a return on, more than a return on our investment. And so if we can leverage all of the additional reach and networks of the routes to improve AMP participation, there are monetary benefits to us as an agency. We can move on to the next slide. I also just provided a quick example of, okay, if it's not AMP enrollment, maybe it's getting people to opt up to Renewable 100. The obvious benefit there is increased renewable energy demand, means that we're out and we're contracting for more projects, we're reducing pollution, we're addressing climate change, all of the things that we want to do. There is also a financial benefit to the agency when people opt up to Renewable 100. So looking at sort of year over year, how many people might we be able to reach and get to sign up? And keep in mind, this is like, for an average residential customer, it's $4 a month to opt up to Renewable 100. So what if we could get, 25,000 in the first year and they would carry through, right? Because it's not an annual sign up. It signs you up for as long as you're a customer. And then some increasing values so that, we get almost to 10,000 at the end of the 3-year period. Then we're going to break even. It's paid for itself. The sponsorship has paid for itself in that scenario. But keep in mind, those customers will continue on the Renewable 100 product. So by the end of the 5th year, we've actually, we're ahead of ourselves. The sponsorship has now more than paid for itself. And I had a conservative analysis as well, saying, okay, that seems like a lot. By the end of the 3rd year, it wouldn't have paid for itself, but by the end of the 5th year, it has. We could go to the next slide. So something that we are always thinking about as we engage in marketing, especially now that we're
Annie, one thing I just want to step in and just go back on that slide where we're talking about Renewable 100. I just want to kind of make a clarifying point here. So this is not, strictly speaking, like margin that is assigned to Renewable 100 relative to Bright Choice. The point that's fundamental here is it's almost like an elasticity question. So when a consumer opts up voluntarily to Renewable 100 and there's a demonstration of a willingness to pay higher than PG&E, we assign a lower long-term likelihood for that customer to opt out, because that customer is no longer a price elastic customer. They're a value customer. And so it's hard to assign a specific monetary value or specific margin there, but it's worth something to us, right? We do not want our customers to opt out, whether it's, not having stranded renewables that we've purchased. And so, this $50 kind of over the lifetime is sort of a swat, an estimate, or I'm sorry, the annual value is a bit of an estimate. I think, we'll say, but it's our effort to say that there is value to us. And I think this is sort of similar to any opt-up campaign that we would run, right? When we think about investing in customers opting up, we want to think about how much are we willing to spend to acquire each one of those customers. And so that's the dynamic here. I think it's just operative to sort of make that point, that we're not suggesting that Renewable 100 customers are somehow generating more margin today than Brilliant 100 customers or Bright Choice customers.
Thanks for that clarification, Nick. And also, while we're still looking at this slide, I'll make a note that with the new communities, we're around 650,000 customers. So to get 6,500, we're looking at 1%. It does seem like a realistic goal. So let's go to the next slide, please. And as I started to say earlier, especially now that we're in more action-oriented marketing rather than just simple customer retention, we're constantly looking at how do we measure the effectiveness, how do we measure the impacts. And so I just wanted to sort of share with you some of the ways that I think we could do this. Surveys, both sort of general surveys, but then maybe targeted surveys directed towards people who have taken action, specific landing pages, looking at the web analytics. Of course, the number of opt-ups, the number of AMP enrollment, that one's pretty obvious. And then, we can, since this is a partnership with the Roots, we would also be sharing sort of the various metrics for social and digital engagement. We can go to the next one. This will be my last slide. And it's just, again, a bit of a summary. So this really expands our reach to promote programs. So it is about brand awareness, which we've always been doing and will continue to do, but we are now in a time period where it's more action-oriented marketing. This does complement the other things that we do. So the baseline brand awareness will continue with our social, our digital, our print, our TV advertising. We'll continue with our hyper-local sponsorships, which are about $50K a year. These are $2,500 grants to local nonprofits and CBOs that are promoting STEM education, youth sports, food security. We did a lot focused on sort of COVID adaptation as well in the last year. And then, of course, event sponsorships will continue. So Habitat for Humanity has been a great partner. We did a wonderful women's leadership build with them in Fremont last year. The county fair, which is now slated to happen in October. We're excited for that. Bike to Work Day, which is across our region. Hopefully it won't be Bike to Wherever Day. Eventually we will go back to work. And this partnership, it really aligns our brand. Our two brands are very much aligned. We're very community-driven, mission-driven, but the Roots is a rapidly growing partner. And I think this is a sort of entry-level opportunity for us to get in to a sponsorship that will most likely become more expensive as the years go on. And we'll just, they're going to continue to grow their fan base, and we'll continue to get that reach and that partnership with them. And so with that, that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Annie. Appreciate that very much. I know you said Taylor from the Roots is here. Is he here to answer questions, or did he want to say a few brief words?
I can definitely say hello. I think Annie covered most of it. Hey, everyone, I'm Taylor with Oakland Roots. Very excited to be on this call. I've been working closely with the EBC team from the very beginning. I think Annie covered a lot of the big things. I mean, we're a relatively new organization, just like EBC. We launched, August 31st of 2019. As Annie shared, we've had several home games since then. All of them have sold out. So the community is definitely getting behind what we're doing. I've seen the Oakland Roots go now in the last year and a half from Division 4 to Division 2. So we are the fastest growing brand in all of soccer currently, and some would say we now have a direct path into MLS. And our fan base, as Annie alluded to, is based all over the East Bay, in every single city, especially the territory with East Bay Community Energy. We have very elaborate partnerships, as Annie shared, on the youth side. But everyone in those cities are buying our tickets, are buying our merchandise. So we look forward to creating and developing even more impactful relationships with nonprofit groups, and even planting trees in your city as well, and telling authentic stories around that. As part of becoming climate positive, we will be investing a lot of the sponsorship back into the community so we can reach that goal. So again, look forward to getting EBC employees involved, the community advisory board, our players, out with some of these initiatives. Marshawn Lynch, we've got a lot of other, big names now that are getting behind our ownership group after that big announcement on Friday. So I think we're going to see a lot of more exciting news coming out about the Roots, and we want to bring soccer at the highest level possible, not only on the men's side but also the women's side. We have big ambitious goals to field a team on the women's side at the highest level possible. And we actually this week just hired our first director level role to help bring forward our mission to bring a women's team, and that will hopefully come through over the next couple of years. And of course, our founding partners like EBC that are on board with us now will play a big role in helping shape what that women's team can look like to the community. And I know we've already included some people over at EBC and some of our early stage focus groups to figuring out what that team can mean to the community, the purpose, as well as even things like what is the name of that team going to look like. So a lot of exciting things in the works. I can talk for days about the Roots and kind of what we're doing, but I think both of our organizations are very much aligned, both in the community with our mission and values. And I can't think of another platform out there that's more aligned, and provides opportunities and marketing and reach in all of EBC's service territory and cities, given we are really a cultural connector and thread in the East Bay and present in every community. So happy to answer any questions. Hopefully that provides a little bit of an overview on the Roots.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Let's see, Mayor Hernandez.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Annie, a quick question. Is there a reason why this wasn't taken to the marketing committee?
No, the presentation, so the development of the pillar structure, I think was in the works on April 1st when we met with the marketing committee. And I think Taylor pitched it to us kind of shortly after that. Things have been moving, I think, quite quickly as they have solidified their relationship with their new league. And then as we move towards the season. So basically, we were not aware of this climate justice partnership opportunity on April 1st.
So Fusion is based out of Livermore, and Dublin United Soccer has their own competitive and also rec team, as well as I'm sure Pleasanton does too. And I've never seen them come out to Dublin. And my significant other is actually the president of the Dublin United Soccer team, and that's why I say that. I'm a huge fan of sports. First of all, I was on the Dublin Little League board. I was also a coach for St. Raymond's basketball. My kids have played all the sports. I, in my opinion, think it's a really big ask. Was there any negotiation at all done, or they just came and asked for $300,000 per year for 3 years?
Nick?
So it is.
Yeah,
Annie?
Yeah, Annie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it is, something that it has been put out to a number of different entities. There are the various pillars. They are signing up sponsors as we speak. So there wasn't any negotiation around the price, but, Taylor did respond to a lot of the questions that I had and offered additional opportunities for some of the marketing and promotional components within the offer.
I would just say, I think the negotiations with the Roots have been more focused on the scope of the partnership as opposed to the price point. To Annie's point, this was, like is often the case, I think, in sponsorships that are viewed as being competitive. There's a price that's offered to the market, and there are multiple interested parties. I think because of our standing relationship with the Oakland Roots, and alignment, they wanted to see us as the partner here, and so I think we've been able to discuss probably additional benefits that would accrue to our customers as a result of this, than may be the case if another entity were to take the sponsorship in our stead.
The only reason why I ask is because then you have the baseball community, you have the basketball community, you have a lot of other sports that not necessarily residents only watch one type of sport, right? And so I'm not sure if the amount that is being asked will really move the needle of us really getting the exposure at that high cost, because there are so many sports, and so many great fans that people love, more than multiple sports. And not everybody, again, I enjoy soccer, I love soccer, but not everybody watches soccer. And so, you have people that watch basketball, you have people that watch all these other different sports. So, and then one last question. I know you guys are streaming because I have a friend that works for Comcast, so I did a little bit of research prior to that. How big is your stadium and how many people does it hold?
Taylor, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So we currently play at Laney College. It holds about 5,000 people, but with the broadcasts, I think as Annie had shared with you, we just did an English linear partnership with Coffee TV. That gives us reach up to 6.5 million people. We're currently working on closing a new partnership with Telemundo and Telexidos on the Spanish linear side as well, which will give us significant reach in the Hispanic and Latinx market. And then of course, all of our games will be on ESPN Plus, which provides, additional reach, and there'll probably be a couple games on ESPN linear networks as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. Just to answer the first, I think, couple comments, our relationship with Livermore Fusion is brand new. We just recently signed them on. I know they're a massive new partner for us. And I think as Annie had shared, we just recently started practicing at Las Positas College. So you'll definitely be hearing a lot more about the Oakland Roots in your area. And we are proactively, building relationships in Dublin as well. I know we've done a player appearance with Dublin United, and we look forward to, building out those relationships a lot more. But to answer your question, it's about 5,000 per game, and we're looking about 16 home games for each year and 16 away games.
Thank you, Taylor. I guess my big issue is that it's a big ask, and I think with the trying times right now, to not have negotiated a better deal is the issue that I'm having with.
Yeah, and I can just share real quickly, sorry, and Nick, I don't want to hop in here, but as they shared, these are brand new pillars that we just recently created. And we do have, other potential partners that are considering them. I know the Healthy Roots pillar, which is one of our 6 pillars, just a couple of days ago, we got a full commitment of $600,000 on a 3-year partnership. So, there is significant value that we're bringing. And I can't think of another partner that would be better than East Bay Clean Energy for the climate justice one, but happy to explore, creative ways we could partner together. I think we all really want to make this work. And I know, Nick and Annie and I have definitely spoke through ways we can really just, increase the value again in delivering on a lot of these things. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and Mayor Martinez, I'll just quickly respond. In terms of the other sports, I agree. Yeah, not everybody is a soccer fan, but in terms of professional sports teams within the East Bay, we're kind of priced out of the A's. Certainly Cal Athletics has approached us, but their fan base is more alumni, and that's much more broad reaching than focused in on Alameda County and Tracy. And so we really like that component of partnering with the Roots. And so I think it's more not necessarily a question of, well, which other sports teams are there, but sort of, is there another opportunity of this magnitude to really increase our reach and really have a solid, committed partner like the Roots who have the same community-driven, purpose-driven approach?
I see other, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hernandez and Annie and Taylor for those responses. I see more hands raised. Councilmember Hannan and then Councilmember Patino.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I do agree with Mayor Hernandez on this. This is a significant request of EBCE, and no disrespect to the Oakland Roots. But if the Oakland Roots should go out of business, I would imagine our yearly commitment would cease at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're not going out of business, but we do have, contracts and legal agreements in place where, we would refund the money like as part of that, contract. But we just announced Marshawn Lynch, a new owner in the Oakland Roots. We have a lot of big, massive names, especially after that announcement, that are joining. We have about 30 different investors, all local in our investor syndicate. So yeah, and as I mentioned, we're planning on bringing a brand new women's team as well, and that we would never be in that position if we weren't sitting, in a good spot financially. So we're fully committed to being here for decades and centuries. So, but we would.
Councilman Director Hannan, not you. I think that certainly those are the kinds of factors that we would include in any in the agreement. Around termination. What are the parameters around the termination right? This is not a blank check. This is subject to clear performance. And so, yeah, we would expect a termination right.
Let's assume for a moment that this passes tonight, Annie. What I'd like to see next year in an annual report is the actual benefit that each of one of our communities receive as a result of this partnership. I do appreciate that a lot of the soccer clubs are going to benefit, but I don't know what that looks like in terms of monetary assistance or whatever the case may be. So if we do approve this, I would like to see an annual report as to the actual benefit to each one of our communities. And then you mentioned the return on investment. You had me up until that point. I'm not sure if that was something that you needed to necessarily go into to at least sway me one way or the other. But since you've raised the return on investment as an opportunity to kind of put us back to even at the end of the day, I would like you to report back at that same time as to how did we do on what we anticipated that return on investment would be if this board does agree to increase the grant amount from 50 to 300,000. And then my last comment, when we heard from our public at the beginning of the meeting regarding the struggles that many of our property owners and tenants face regarding struggling to pay electrical bills, and certainly we've seen the food lines at many of our communities, it's really challenging and difficult for me to see a $300,000 commitment made to a sports team with other significant issues surrounding our various communities. But I'll leave those to my comments. Those will be my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Councilmember Patino and then Mayor May.
Thank you, Chair Calb. Yeah, Annie did allude to this, that this is a big ask of us. And I like the idea in general, but this really should have gone through the marketing subcommittee. This way, it could have come here to the full board, and you, as everybody as board members knows, that it was fully vetted at the marketing committee meeting. That's why we have these committees, so that we could do the work there, bring it to you, to the other members of the board, knowing that this has been properly vetted. And it wasn't. And this way you would have at least known that we did our due diligence on the marketing committee to vet this, make sure it's money well spent, and maybe see if we could get a better deal. I have a hard time rushing this through without having it vetted properly, what I feel is proper, especially as we heard other speakers earlier speaking about not a lot of our people in our community not being able to pay their bills, needing debt relief. I can't support it in its current form right now. I'm not saying I'm against it in principle, but right now in its current form, I think it needed to go to the proper channels in order to get to this point. So at this point, I just cannot back it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Mayor May, your hand is still up?
I think that Mayor Hannon was in front of me, but or not
He already spoke once.
Okay, his hand's up. That's why I was wondering. Okay. No, I think that it's interesting proposition for me because I think that there is awareness, and for certain parts of the world, I would say football isn't a sport, it's a religion, especially having traveled for other parts. I know that you have some partnership with Fremont Youth Soccer, and I would definitely say that in the Tri-City area, I know Newark and Union City have very strong teams too. I'm interested in the partnership, but I am concerned about the commitment when we hear so many of the other speakers this evening about the cost aspect. I think it would be easier to digest if we could see. I know that it's saying that there's visibility, but as you've heard from so many of the different speakers this evening about funds, if there was something that we could see that there was some sort of benefit that, for example, we're talking about assistance for supporting maintenance of, I guess, of delivery of services to our families or low-income families or those most at need. So if there was a partnership there where we could see that, it's going to directly correlate not just into impressions or images, but also into direct funding, perhaps opportunities or programs. And that's where we could work with yourselves in marketing or some of that so that we can feel more of a win-win right now, especially in this time period when there's so much struggle. And so that would be something that I would be more encouraged by if we could do so. It's interesting perspective for me. I formerly, many moons ago, was in radio, and I worked in a partnership of a deal with one of our largest grocery stores, as well as with our Phillies team. And that was the year they went to it tells me how long ago it was. It was the year they went to the World Series. So it's been a few years. But it was a good program whereby it was able to commit to a benefit directly to the radio stations, to the businesses. It was a win-win-win. And so that's what I'm interested in trying to craft with you here. Absolutely, I think there's impressions. Absolutely, I think there's more in terms of benefits. But if I could see a direct correlation that's more tied to the consumers itself as a community-based energy corporation in terms of its effort and choice aggregate, if we could see something directly more aligned in that way of benefits, because waiting 3 years out to break even is a challenge. I'm not against the idea. I think that this is a phenomenal opportunity, and certainly I'm very proud of the efforts. And I think it does align well with us in terms of our focus and our need for trying to be green. But green for us also means green for our community, and certainly services would be important for us and try to keep those. So if there was a program that you think we could craft that would more directly in this time period of tremendous COVID need, continuation of services and supports like you heard so many of the speakers tonight, then I would be much more in favor of it. And I also too would like to see that the marketing committee had a chance to vet this and talk to us about this.
Thank you. Councilmember Narum.
Yes, thank you. I see this as a unique marketing opportunity and something that's really quite out of the box. However, it is, I think, a big ask at this time in COVID, and maybe it's more of a timing issue given what's going on in our communities with the COVID and what we heard earlier. As a newer member of EBCE, it would be helpful, I think, to understand how this fits into the budget. Is there discretionary money that would pay for this or pay for a scaled back program? Or, as well as being able to craft something or review something to address some of the comments and concerns that we heard earlier tonight. So, I think for me, well, I appreciate the effort to do something unique and in line with the values of the organization. I really think I need more information to be able to support this in terms of how it fits into the financial picture for EBCE. And I apologize, that may be just flying newness at this, but I do think our responsibility is, fiscal soundness. And so I'm hesitant to support something without understanding that a little bit better. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez, and then Vice Chair Martinez, and then I'll talk for a minute. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and please forgive me for being unmuted a little earlier in the meeting. I remember the day when I played soccer in a soccer league that was all male, and I was one of the only 2 females on that league. And so it's a really wonderful thing to hear that, we're at a time now where, women in sports is something that is much more mainstream. But personal feelings aside about liking sports and wanting to promote women in sports, I do think that there is more to be discussed here and that this ought to go back to committee. I think about the amount, and I think about some of the meetings that we've had where we're looking at folks who are, have medical vulnerabilities, for example, and could use, some form of battery backups, during our fire seasons and so forth. I mean, there might be some other places where we might be able to provide people that, very directly are needy. And that's where I think currently we ought to be thinking about, if we do have some money, where it should be going, because there's so much weight right now on those that are vulnerable, especially in this time of COVID. But I'd like to hear what, the marketing committee comes back with, and that way I can have more information and weigh in at that appropriate time. And then additionally, just speaking a little bit out of turn here, but there are a lot of ways that we could get a return on our investment if we're looking at through that particular lens, which is an interesting one in this dialogue. And that is, for example, in our school district here in San Leandro, our trustees voted to do ads on buses promoting our school district as an award-winning school district. Those buses were actually contributed to higher attrition in our school district, and people from even private schools elected to come back to our public school district. And we became well known throughout the East Bay and even in San Francisco. Those buses just go all over the place. So there are a lot of creative ways if we want to really champion the idea of upping up to Renewable 100, which I'm fully in support of. I want to thank everybody this evening for bringing this idea forward, and I look forward to continuing this discussion in the future, but not this evening. I'm not looking to vote on it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martinez, and then Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to check in with staff to see. It sounds like the majority of my colleagues they're interested in the Oakland roots and can appreciate the synergies between our organization and theirs. But a lot of folks are hesitant and are wanting to see this go to committee. I'm just wondering what the timeline is, if we will have the time to explore either this opportunity or another scale of opportunity with the roots, if we bring this to committee and then come back to the board. So I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our preference would have been to bring this to committee, but this opportunity will not be available to us if we do not act. So the reason we brought it tonight is so we could have this conversation and determine whether or not this is something we want to do, because the time scale under which the roots are operating for this particular opportunity is bound.
Right.
And it came to us after our last committee meeting, and they needed a decision before we were going to have time to schedule our next one. Certainly, I expect that there are going to be other opportunities we can certainly pursue with the Roots. I mean, we already have an existing sponsorship with the Roots. I'm sure that, you know, given the alignment and the relationship, there are going to be other things for us to do, but not this. And I do think that we're not going to be able to likely pursue the depth of partnership in the near term, at least, with the Roots. So, you know, I think that's fine, you know, and we will certainly continue to work with the Roots to see what other interesting, exciting things there are to do. But, you know, this was a unique time-bound opportunity that we felt was worth bringing forward to get feedback. And, you know, I think the one point I did just kind of incrementally want to make, and, you know, it is in relation to a lot of the discussion that we've had, or a lot of the public comment that we heard today. It's that one of the things that we have observed in our 3 years of operations, particularly when it comes to customer participation in programs, and they can be programs like our solar program, or they can be programs like encouraging participation in the care program and encouraging participation in the arrearage management program. It's really hard to engage with people around utility bills. It's a topic that it's not typically top of mind. It's a service that is somewhat invisible until there's an issue. And yet, you know, it's an imperative. There's a climate imperative, and there's an economic imperative for so many of our customers who are having challenges paying their bills. And so we have really been taking on a challenge over the last 6 months internally to think about ways we can significantly increase and expand our reach to our customers beyond the channels that we're using today. Because the channels we're using today are not sufficient to the task at hand for us. If we think about the fact that there are 13,000 households, 25,000, 30,000 people in Alameda County who owe millions of dollars in utility bills and are eligible for a program that could provide full relief for those programs, it is an imperative for us to reach every single one of those households. We do not currently have the tools and the capacity to do that. And we're trying to figure out the ways to do that. Certainly there's going to be parts of that are reaching, you know, partnering with community-based organizations. And we've been doing that quite a bit. But there are, I would say, more mass market approaches, leveraging brands and frankly, influencers who have a broad reach and have name recognition. And so again, we thought this is an opportunity to do that. I don't think this is the only opportunity to do it. And, you know, I think my main takeaway here is, you know, as we think about our next, just check in with the marketing, the marketing committee, to really start to think about, you know, what are the parameters and what are the thresholds that are of interest to the board as we start to move beyond our traditional modes of outreach, mailers, email, some limited social media, and really try to touch a heck of a lot more people.
I think that's a good route, Nick, and I certainly hope that our relationship with the Oakland Roots remains really good, and that as they develop use of this new pillar system, that they're going to be able to report back to us on how successful it is and the amount of impressions that they're getting with customers, especially locally. And those are the folks that we're interested in. So their reach and depth will be of interest to me, not just in the near future, but in, you know, years from now when this opportunity arises again, say. I know I'm going to want to hear about it again.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Annie for the presentation. I think it was extremely comprehensive, and having more information about kind of getting it later in the stage, the information. I do appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited about the opportunity. So I'm wondering if there's any way we can find some type of middle ground. Maybe we don't start with a $300,000 commitment, some way to just solidify the relationship, but allow time for this discussion to be had more thoroughly through the marketing committee. So I'll just throw that out there. I'm sure that might complicate things with council and with Taylor, but I don't want to see us losing out on this opportunity. I think we're all struggling because of the other financial pressing needs in the community, but I think this is a unique opportunity to expand our reach. So I don't want us to miss out on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those are all the hands I saw. Can I ask a question? Taylor, you're still with us, right? Yes. Thank you for being here. And you heard some of the range of intertwined comments and such, part of it having to do with the timing and the feeling of rushness, being rushed and so on. And maybe part having to do with even though the presentation was quite thorough, and thank you, Annie, for that, that there's some apparent interest or desire or preference to see if there is if there's a different level than the $300,000 level, or are there even more benefits we can negotiate for that same price? So, you know, what flexibility is there? And also, if you could just share with us, what is the timeline for your higher ups to need us to make a final decision on this?
Yeah, great question. I think, again, as Annie and Nick alluded to, these are brand new pillars that we just established. You know, our season is right around the corner. I think with this one in particular, you know, there were some bigger assets, you know, like being on the back of our game day jersey. And the reason why I think it was escalated so quickly in this meeting, probably not in the marketing meeting, is because our official jersey launch is at the end of next week. And so some of those assets will likely have to be pulled. But we definitely do have other marketing opportunities that we can explore that would likely, it sounds like, could be at a lower level. But I cannot guarantee that this pillar in particular will still be available at that time. But, you know, EBC has been a founding partner of the Roots since the very beginning. We have an amazing relationship. We really love, you know, working with them, and we hope to get creative, as I think, you know, again, there's just so much synergies here, but we'll just have to get back to the drawing board and just figuring out what that could look like. But, you know, two different tiers I could share now. You know, instead of being on the back of our game day jersey, we could look at, you know, the front of our practice jersey, and that's at a $225K level per year. You know, EBC could still be the presenting partner of our climate justice program, but, you know, some of the marketing assets will definitely have to be scaled back quite a bit, and you just won't see, you know, some of the retail reach in Oaklandish throughout the East Bay, and you won't have walking billboards, you know, walking around with the jersey. And then, you know, we could even scale it back a little bit more, looking at another asset. So there's definitely some flexibility. I think it will just be good to know, you know, what level is EBC comfortable with, but just recognize that if we do consider these lower tiers, you know, there's definitely going to be some significant marketing elements that will likely be removed. But I think regardless, we can work together to come up with some very compelling, you know, opportunities that EBC will still be very, very excited about. I know, and speaking with Nick on Monday with their CMO, just, you know, we kicked around the idea of, you know, that now that Marjon Lynch is an owner, you know, could we create a very impactful video, you know, getting him to record something, you know, telling, you know, the EBC customers or potential new customers to opt up to clean energy or apply for, you know, some of these assistance programs. And I think having a spokesperson like that communicate a message. I mean, Annie had shared, you know, what he just did with Dr. Fauci. I mean, this guy's got over 2 million people following him. He grew up in Oakland. He went to Cal. I mean, everyone in the East Bay follows this guy, and they respect him. And having an influential person, you know, delivering that message is going to bring, you know, significant value that EBC would never otherwise see. And so I think, you know, as we look at these other tiers, some of those opportunities, you know, might not be available. But again, I think we're willing to get creative. We've really, really enjoyed working with EBC since the very beginning. So hopefully that answers the question.
I don't know if it answers the question, but I think it's a good attempt to answer the question. I was more thinking at the same price point of 300,000, is there even more we can get that might produce even more interaction and benefit for EBC customers? And you may not be able, there may not be an answer to that right off the top of your head, but that's one of the things I heard from some of the board members here. And now I also wanted to say that, by the way, in our chat, our colleague, Councilmember Kick from Livermore, thought this was she said, I have to jump off now, but this is fantastic. Livermore would vote yes if this gets a motion. Of course, you can't vote absentee, but she did seem supportive of that. And, you know, I will certainly acknowledge my bias, given that I am representing Oakland and that I'm familiar with the Roots. I've had meetings with them, not about EBCE at all, but so, and obviously Oakland is where they're based. So I think it's unfortunate this is a kind of a rushed opportunity without the time to have a couple meetings on this. I don't know what would change. You know, when you have these broad marketing things, you know, with it's kind of like advertising marketing, it's hard to nail down the, you know, known benefits. I mean, you talk to anybody in the advertising world and they'll tell you, yeah, we think we're going to make, you know, they don't really know. You know, they know that they do a little better than not advertising, but they don't really know what they get from this many commercials or that many commercials. And so this is one of those things. This is a thing where we see all the benefits that we could get. Some are absolute. We definitely get exposure. Other things are anticipated or opportunities. It's hard to guarantee. You can guarantee some of these things because we'll know. You can't guarantee everything. And so this would be part of our marketing budget, obviously, in our next fiscal or next two fiscal years. I do want to say that we have to take public comment on this. So, of course, and I do want to hear from the public what people's thoughts are and interests. So, Mr. Clerk, if you can call any public speakers who have expressed interest in talking, that'd be great.
No one has signed up for public comment.
Okay, and I don't see any hands raised in the attendee list. Whoop. I don't know where that's coming from. Okay. Marshawn Lynch is here. Woo! Okay, so no public commenter. Oh, I see one hand. Okay, I do see one hand. Mr. Clerk, for 2 minutes.
Yes. Blair Beekman, you are unmuted.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I had to step away for a bit of a time and I just came back. I will have to review this item at a later time, but I heard just a nice enthusiasm from Councilperson Kalb, or Chairperson Kalb, I guess, on this item. So I just wanted to just chime in at this time, and so he doesn't feel so alone in his good efforts. And sounds like an interesting item. So thank you for your time, and I just wanted to make a quick public comment. Thanks.
Thank you. I did have one more question, Nick or Taylor. I believe that the proposal was $300,000 a year for 3 years. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And do we have the option of saying, well, we'll give you $300,000 for 2 years, but we can't commit to the third year now? Is that even an option?
I'll have to put some thought to that because, you know, with this pillar in particular, just in full transparency, to become climate positive, it's a long-term play. You know, we don't want to bring on a partner and commit to being climate positive. And then, you know, for whatever reason, if it doesn't work out in year 3, then it's like, what do we do? I mean, we're fully confident we're going to deliver and it's going to be a smashing success. But we look at this as a 3-year commitment in the timeline. But, you know, if it has to be 2 year, I mean, we can have an open dialogue, but we really are looking for a 3-year commitment on this pillar.
Yep, I thought that would be the answer. That makes perfect sense. I just wanted to ask the question. Let's see, is Mayor May back in the queue?
Yes, I am.
Oh, go ahead.
I just had one other question. I was going to ask something very similar to you to see if there was other alternatives. And I do know it sounds like it's a 3-year commitment, but I was thinking even if it was, we talked about recognition and branding, and I was going to joke and say, even if we could say we could electrify your roots or charge your roots, and whether or not you would cross brand with us to sell things like chargers or something like that. So that people, certain things that people do carry and that tie directly to what we're talking about, which is access and solar, and whether or not you would cross brand with us on some opportunities like that on a smaller scale, that one directly addresses some of the concerns with access for solar charging and other things with our low income. So we're providing some benefit directly to our consumers and to students or those who are at risk. And 2, it creates our brand awareness. So I was wondering if you would consider something like that. I know it's something I know you have a Roots store.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, maybe we do it that way so that we can see a direct return that directly correlates to our community benefit and also gets our branding out there. Even I was going to say, even if it was a patch and it was like some sort of modification of your logo in combination with ours.
Yeah. Just to answer that, we're always happy to collaborate on those co-branded initiatives. We've done co-branded skateboards, we've done co-branded beers, we've done co-branded shoes. Really, it's an endless opportunity on that front. So we're definitely happy to collaborate on chargers or any other type of giveaways, or even potentially sell them as well and see a return.
Well, I was thinking about selling, and then also about the fact that I think Commissioner Lopez mentioned about how we were talking about those at risk, and we've had these situations right now with the environment and with people losing power and having lack of access. So if there was a way to both deliver a product that benefits as well as brand recognition, I think that would be much more appealable to me in terms of budget and return. And I could see a direct benefit to our community members.
Yep. Yeah, we're definitely happy to explore that. I think, part of this proposal today was being on our jersey, right? And that's co-branded in itself. And, 5.10% of our sales go back into the community. Everything we do is community driven. So there is a return. And then of course, as part of this pillar, I think we had shared, for every goal scored, $510 gets donated back to the innovative carbon offsetting program with planting trees. And so we're going to score a lot of goals this year. There's going to be a lot of tree planting throughout the East Bay. So, definitely there's opportunity to explore, different co-branded opportunities. So yeah, hopefully that answers it.
You could make it, that's how we roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Our climate goal. Okay. All right, enough of that. It's getting late. So any other comments, colleagues? I would support this today, but I realize not everybody else feels that way. And based on what I heard, I see Councilmember Hannan in the queue again. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to move this conversation along, I'm going to make a motion that we decline the proposal that has been presented this evening and ask that the issue be brought forward to the marketing committee to see and explore other opportunities to partner with this organization moving forward. Thank you.
Second. Oops, sorry.
Either one.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. So there's a motion and a second. Okay, I see no other hands up. I don't think that we have to have a motion to not take it, but we could, since we do have a motion, we might as well go forward with the motion. So that's fine. Let's do a roll call vote on the motion as stated.
Great. Alameda County. Albany.
Stan.
Berkeley. Dublin.
Yes.
Fremont.
Yes.
Hayward.
No.
Livermore. Oh,
she's gone.
Abstained. Oh, no, absent. Excused. Newark.
Yes.
Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Yes.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Tracy.
No.
Union City.
Yes.
Emeryville,
Aye.
Oakland.
No.
Okay, so we have 7 yes, 5 no, and so and 1 abstained. So and 2 excused. The measure passes.
Yeah, motion passes.
Motion passes.
Yeah, so, okay. So that's that. Thank you, Taylor, for being here and for working with our staff. And thanks to our staff for doing this so quickly. And I'm not sure what else to say here, but thank you. And we're going to move on. It's late. I think we have one more agenda item, don't we? Let's see here what we got. No, that's it. Board member announcements and requests to put future items on the agenda and whatnot. So here we go, to my colleagues here. Any announcements or other things to mention as it relates to EBCE? Mike, is that your hand still up?
I'm sorry.
Is your hand up?
I'm going to lower it.
Okay. Anybody have any announcements or comments, closing comments as we say goodnight? It's kind of late, of course. I'm seeing none. Okay, everybody have a wonderful, safe rest of the month, and good luck with your committees that you're on for EBCE and all the other things we're doing for your city. And have a great day, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Chair.